The brass mail slot gleamed under the hallway light as Thea's trembling fingers pushed the red envelope through. The metallic clang echoed like a gunshot. She froze. That wasn't a Christmas card. That was the burn letter. 3 years of silent longing for Declan Hayes, her neighbor, written in ink she'd meant to destroy tonight. But in the holiday chaos, she grabbed the wrong stack. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she sprinted to his door, boots slipping on the old Victorian tiles. She pounded. Once. Twice. The door swung open. Declan stood there, the torn red envelope in his hand, his gray eyes locked on one line. I love you more than I love myself. Thea's apartment smelled like cinnamon in Bad Decisions. The morning light filtered through frost-patterned windows, casting geometric shadows across her cluttered desk. 32 Christmas cards lay in crooked rows, each one addressed in her careful handwriting. Neighbors, clients, her mother in Vermont, and then there was the red envelope, the one she'd promised herself she'd burn tonight. She pressed her palm flat against the desk, steadying herself. Her fingers were stained with ink, midnight blue, the color she always used when she couldn't sleep. The color she'd used to write Declan's name over and over in the margins of her sketchbook for 3 years. Through the thin Victorian wall, she heard him. The low murmur of his voice on a work call, something about load-bearing beams and historical preservation. Declan Hayes, apartment 4B, architect who restored old buildings and never seemed to notice the girl in 4A who drew him every morning while he drank coffee on his fire escape. Thea picked up the red envelope. It was heavier than the others, stuffed with 3 pages of confessions she'd written at 2 a.m. after too much wine and too much silence. She'd titled it The Burn Letter in her journal, a therapeutic exercise her therapist had suggested. Write down everything you're afraid to say, then destroy it. The problem was, she'd written it too well. Every word felt true. Every sentence carved out a piece of her chest and laid it bare on the page. The part where she admitted she'd memorized the sound of his footsteps. The part where she confessed she'd declined a date last month because the man wasn't him. The part where she'd drawn his hands so many times she could sketch them from memory. The calluses on his fingers from handling old wood. The way his thumb traced the rim of his coffee cup when he was thinking. She set it aside, face down. Tonight, she'd burn it tonight after the post office closed. Mrs. Pemberton knocked on her door. 3 sharp raps that made Thea jump. Thea, dear, are you posting those cards today? I need to catch the mail truck before 2. Thea glanced at the clock. 1:45. Shit. The gallery deadline. She needed her portfolio to reach Morrison Gallery by the 27th, and the holiday mail delays meant she had to send it today. She grabbed the stack of cards, her portfolio envelope, shoved them all into her tote bag. Mrs. Pemberton was already halfway down the hall, moving surprisingly fast for 73. Coming, Thea called, grabbing her coat. She didn't look back at the desk, didn't notice the red envelope that had somehow slipped between 2 Christmas cards when she'd swept them into her bag. Didn't see it wedge itself into the stack, hidden beneath a card addressed to her dentist. The Victorian staircase spiraled down 4 floors, narrow and dizzying. Thea took the steps 2 at a time, her breath clouding in the unheated stairwell. Outside, London was dressed in December gray, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones and made you believe summer was a myth. Mrs. Pemberton was already at the corner post office, arguing with the clerk about international postage. Thea dumped her cards into the outgoing mail slot, keeping only her portfolio to hand directly to the counter. Relief flooded through her. Done. One less thing to worry about before Christmas. She bought stamps she didn't need just to avoid Mrs. Pemberton's lecture about planning ahead, then walked home through streets strung with lights that looked sad in the daylight. Her phone buzzed. A reminder. Burn the letter. Tonight. No excuses. She smiled grimly. Finally, something she could control. Thea's hands moved on autopilot, ripping open a box of pasta. The kettle screamed. She'd been home for 20 minutes, long enough to kick off her boots and pull on wool socks, long enough to realize she was starving, not long enough to think about the letter, until she opened her desk drawer to grab a pen. The red envelope wasn't there. She frowned, shuffling papers. Maybe she'd left it on the bookshelf. No. Under the sketch pad? No. Her pulse quickened. She pulled open every drawer, scattering pencils and charcoal sticks across the floor. The apartment was small, a studio with a kitchenette and a bathroom the size of a closet. There were only so many places a letter could hide. "Okay," she said aloud, forcing her voice steady. "Retrace your steps. Desk, cards, Mrs. Pemberton knocking, the rush to leave, her tote bag. Her tote bag, which now sat empty on the hook by the door, which she dumped at the post office, into the outgoing mail slot." The floor tilted. Thea grabbed the edge of the counter, her vision narrowing to a pinpoint. No, that wasn't possible. She'd been careful. She'd put the burn letter aside, face down, separate from everything else. But her desk had been a mess, and she'd been in a hurry, and oh God. She lunged for her phone, nearly knocking over the kettle. Her fingers shook so badly it took 3 tries to unlock the screen. She pulled up her notes app, where she'd listed every card's recipient. Dentist, mom, the couple in 3C who always smiled at her in the elevator. And then, her stomach dropped through the floor. She'd written Declan's name. She'd addressed one card to Declan Hayes, 4B, because Mrs. Pemberton had insisted everyone in the building exchange cards, and refusing would have been weird. A generic Happy Holidays card with a snowman on the front. But what if? What if she'd grabbed the red envelope instead of the snowman card? What if it was sitting in his mailbox right now, with his name on it, with 3 years of pathetic longing inside it? Thea was moving before the thought finished forming. She yanked open her door, sprinted the 10 feet down the hall to Declan's apartment. The building's antique mail slots were built into each door, brass flaps that opened from the inside. If the letter was there, it would be sitting in the tray behind his slot. If he hadn't checked his mail yet, she pressed her ear to his door. Silence. He'd been on a call earlier, but that was hours ago. He could be out. He could be at a site visit. He could be anywhere. Or he could be inside, reading. Thea knocked. Too soft. She knocked again, harder. "Declan, are you home?" Footsteps. Her heart tried to claw out of her chest. The lock clicked. The door opened. Declan stood in the frame, barefoot, wearing a faded Columbia architecture sweatshirt and jeans with plaster dust on the knees. His dark hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. He held a book in one hand. No, not a book. A torn, red envelope. His gray eyes met hers. Not angry, not confused. Something else. Something that made her want to sink through the Victorian floorboards and disappear into the foundations. "Thea," he said quietly. His voice was rough, like he'd been holding his breath. She couldn't speak, couldn't move, could only stare at the red envelope, at the way his thumb rested against the torn edge, at the single page visible inside with her handwriting bleeding through. He'd read it. He'd read at least some of it, maybe all of it. "I can explain," she choked out, and even she didn't believe herself. Just grab it and run. That was Thea's first thought. Her second thought was that Declan was 6 inches taller and significantly calmer, and trying to wrestle the letter from him would end with her face first on the hallway floor. Her third thought was the one that came out of her mouth. "That's research," her voice cracked, "for a novel." The hallway felt too narrow, the ceiling too low. Every Victorian detail she usually loved, the crown molding, the original sconces, now seemed designed to trap her in this moment. Declan's expression didn't change. He glanced down at the letter, then back at her. "A novel," he repeated. "A romance novel. I'm trying to write one. For practice, the lie tasted like copper. It's an exercise, to develop my visual storytelling skills. Illustrators need to understand narrative structure. Why was she still talking? Why couldn't she stop talking? Declan leaned against the doorframe, and the movement brought him closer. Close enough that she could see the small scar above his left eyebrow, the one he'd gotten from a falling roof tile on a restoration project. He'd told her that story exactly once, 2 years ago, when they'd both been collecting mail at the same time. She'd drawn that scar 17 times. "It's very convincing," Declan said. His tone was unreadable. Carefully neutral, the way he spoke during building inspections when he found structural damage but didn't want to alarm the owner. The specificity, the details, heat crawled up her neck. She knew exactly which details he meant. The part about his hands, the part about the way he drank his coffee, the part where she described the exact shade of gray his eyes turned in certain light. "Smoke before a storm," she'd written, like an idiot. "That's what makes good fiction," she said, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "Believable details." "Right." He folded the letter, her humiliation, and slipped it back into the envelope. "And the character, the man in your story, he's fictional," Thea said too quickly. "Completely made up, an amalgamation of traits." "An amalgamation." The corner of his mouth twitched. Was he laughing at her? Oh God, he was definitely laughing at her. "He sounds like someone who wouldn't know what to do if the woman actually told him the truth." Thea's breath caught. There was something in the way he said it, something that felt like a door opening, or maybe a trapdoor giving way beneath her feet. "Well," she managed, "that's the conflict. He's oblivious." "Is he?" Declan straightened, and suddenly the hallway felt even smaller. "Or is he waiting for her to stop hiding?" The radiator hissed. Somewhere below, a door slammed. Thea's pulse hammered in her ears so loudly she was certain he could hear it. She reached for the envelope. "Can I have it back? I need to, revise the ending." Declan held it just out of reach. Not meanly, more like he was considering something. His eyes searched hers, and she felt dissected. Every layer of her careful defenses peeled back. "Keep it," she blurted, "for reference, in case you ever want to know what not to do in a relationship." That was supposed to be a joke. It came out desperate. Declan's expression softened. He held out the envelope, and when she took it, his fingers brushed hers. It lasted less than a second, just skin on skin, warm and solid, but it sent electricity straight through her sternum. "Thea," he said, and the way he said her name felt like a question she didn't know how to answer. "I have to go," she whispered. "Pasta's burning." It wasn't. She hadn't even turned on the stove, but she was already backing away, clutching the envelope to her chest like a shield, and Declan let her go. He watched her retreat to her door, watched her fumble with her keys, watched her disappear inside. Only when her door clicked shut did she let herself slide down to the floor, the envelope crumpled against her knees, and wonder if the worst part was that he'd read it, or that he'd given it back. "You're being ridiculous," Thea glared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. "He bought it. He thinks you're writing a novel." Her reflection looked unconvinced, mascara smudged, wild-haired. The kind of person who accidentally confessed 3 years of feelings to her neighbor and then lied about it like a coward. She splashed cold water on her face, but it didn't help. Nothing would help except possibly moving to another country or another dimension. She pulled out her phone and texted her best friend Margot in New York. "I did something catastrophically stupid." 3 dots appeared immediately. Margot, bless her, was always awake at weird hours. "Scale of 1 to 10? 17. Did someone die? Just my dignity. Details. Now." Thea typed out the whole story, the burn letter, the accidental mailing, the horrifying confrontation. Her thumbs flew across the screen, and with each word, the reality of it settled deeper into her bones. She'd told Declan she loved him. No, worse, she'd told him she loved him more than she loved herself, which was both true and the most pathetic sentence ever written in the English language. Margot's response came in rapid fire. Oh, honey. Honey! Okay, first of all, that's actually beautiful. Second of all, you need to commit to the novel lie or come clean. There's no middle ground here. Thea stared at the text. Commit or come clean. Two options, both terrible. If she committed to the lie, she'd have to avoid Declan for the rest of her lease. If she came clean, she'd have to avoid him for the rest of her life. A knock at her door made her drop the phone in the sink. She fished it out, hands shaking, and crept to the peephole. Please be Mrs. Pemberton. Please be the gas meter reader. Please be literally anyone except... Declan stood in the hallway, holding a plate of something covered in tinfoil. Thea pressed her forehead against the door. This was a nightmare. She was asleep, and this was a nightmare, and she'd wake up any second in a reality where she hadn't ruined everything. He knocked again. Thea, I know you're home. Of course he knew. Her lights were on, and the walls were thin enough that he'd probably heard her earlier meltdown. She took a breath, smoothed her hair, and opened the door exactly 4 inches. Hi, she said, aiming for casual and landing somewhere near unhinged. Declan held up the plate. I made too much dinner. Thought you might want some. This was a trap. This had to be a trap. Normal neighbors didn't bring dinner plates after reading love letters. Normal neighbors pretended the whole thing never happened and avoided eye contact for 6 to 8 months. That's okay, Thea said. I already ate. Your pasta burned, remember? Damn it, her own lie coming back to haunt her. Declan's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. It's just shepherd's pie, Mrs. Pemberton's recipe. She gave me enough for 4 people. Mrs. Pemberton, the traitor landlady who'd probably orchestrated this entire disaster by forcing everyone to exchange Christmas cards in the first place. Thea opened the door wider because refusing would be weird, and she'd already maxed out her weird quota for the day. Declan stepped inside, and her apartment suddenly felt the size of a shoebox. He set the plate on her kitchenette counter, his movements careful and deliberate, like he was navigating a historical site that might collapse if he stepped wrong. You didn't have to do this, Thea said. I know. He turned to face her, and the distance between them was maybe 3 feet. But I wanted to. There it was again, that weighted tone, like his words meant more than their surface definition. Thea crossed her arms, defense mode. If this is about the letter, it's about you not eating, Declan interrupted, and me being a decent neighbor. Right, neighborly. She let out a breath. Look, I'm sorry you had to read that. It was supposed to be private. I know. And I know it probably made you uncomfortable. Did it make you uncomfortable? Declan asked. Writing it? The question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. What? Writing something that honest, he clarified. His gray eyes held hers, steady and patient. For your novel, did it feel uncomfortable? He was giving her an out, letting her keep the lie, and somehow that made it worse. Terrifying, Thea admitted before she could stop herself. It felt terrifying. Declan nodded slowly, like she'd confirmed something. Good fiction usually is. He moved toward the door, and Thea felt something close to panic. Like if he left now, they'd never talk about this again. They'd go back to polite hallway exchanges and pretending she hadn't just handed him her entire heart on 3 pages of notebook paper. Declan, she said. He paused, hand on the doorknob. Thank you for the food and for not being weird about everything. He looked back at her and his expression was impossible to read. You're welcome, Thea. Merry Christmas. Then he was gone, and she was alone with a plate of shepherd's pie and the growing certainty that she just made everything infinitely more complicated. The radiator in Thea's apartment died at 4 a.m. on December 23rd. She woke to the sound of absolute silence. No hissing, no clanking, just the eerie quiet of a heating system giving up. Her breath misted in the air above her bed. "No," she whispered to the darkness. "No, no, no." She stumbled out of bed, wrapped in her duvet, and pressed her hand to the radiator. Cold. Completely cold. She jiggled the valve. Nothing. She checked the pilot light on her ancient wall heater. Out. Outside, snow had started falling. Not the pretty Christmas card kind, the aggressive, wind-driven kind that turned London into a gray-white blur. The forecast had called for a winter storm, but Thea had been too busy marinating in her humiliation to pay attention. She texted Mrs. Pemberton, "Heating's out. Do you have the repair service number?" The response came surprisingly fast for 4 a.m. "Oh, dear. They won't come until after Boxing Day. Too busy. Can you stay with family?" Thea stared at her phone. Her mother was in Vermont. Margot was in New York. Everyone else she knew in London was either traveling for Christmas or lived too far for a 4 a.m. rescue mission. She pulled on every piece of clothing she owned, 2 pairs of socks, leggings under jeans, 3 sweaters, and tried to sleep. By 6 a.m., she was shivering so hard her teeth chattered. By 7, she'd given up and was huddled in her kitchenette, running the oven with the door open and hating herself for it. A knock at the door made her jump. Declan stood in the hallway, holding 2 coffee cups from the corner shop. He wore a thick, cable-knit sweater and looked annoyingly well-rested. "Mrs. Pemberton texted me," he said. "Your heat's out?" Thea pulled the duvet tighter. "I'm fine." "You're running your oven for heat." "That's not fine, that's dangerous." He held out one of the coffees. "Come to my place. I have a working radiator and a fireplace." "I can't." "You can," Declan said firmly. "Don't be stubborn. It's going to be below freezing for the next 2 days." Thea wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her dignity, what little remained of it. But another gust of wind rattled her windows, and she was so cold her fingers had gone numb. "Just until the repair service comes," she said. "Just until then," Declan agreed. She grabbed her laptop, her sketchbook, and the portfolio she still needed to proof before the gallery deadline. Declan waited while she locked her door, then led her the 10 feet down the hall to 4B. His apartment was the mirror image of hers, but it felt completely different. Warm, for one thing. The radiator hissed contentedly, and a fire crackled in the small fireplace she'd never known these units had. Books lined makeshift shelves, architecture journals, historical preservation guides, a surprising number of mysteries. His drafting table sat by the window, covered in blueprints and sketches. "Make yourself comfortable," Declan said, gesturing to the worn leather couch. "I'll get you a blanket." Thea perched on the edge of the couch, hyper-aware that this was Declan's space. The place she'd imagined 1,000 times, but never actually seen. There were photos on the mantel, him with an older couple who must be his parents, him at a construction site wearing a hard hat, him laughing at something off camera. She'd drawn him laughing once, from memory. It hadn't turned out right. She'd never seen his real smile up close. Declan returned with a thick wool blanket and draped it over her shoulders. His hand brushed her arm, and she tensed. "Coffee," he said, handing her the cup. "Drink it before it gets cold." The coffee was perfect, exactly the way she took it. Oat milk, no sugar. She stared at him. "Mrs. Pemberton told me," Declan said, reading her expression. "Last year, I was picking up coffee and she mentioned you just ordered the same thing." He'd remembered. For a year, he'd remembered how she took her coffee. Thea wrapped her hands around the cup and tried not to cry. The fire cast moving shadows across Declan's face as he worked at his drafting table. Thea had been in his apartment for 6 hours, and the strangeness of it hadn't worn off. If anything, it had intensified. They'd fallen into an easy silence, her sketching on the couch, him reviewing blueprints, but the air felt charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm. She'd caught him looking at her 3 times. Each time he glanced away quickly, but not quickly enough. "Are you hungry?" Declan asked, breaking the quiet. "I was going to make lunch." "I can help," Thea offered, already standing. "You're a guest." "I'm a refugee," she corrected. "Let me contribute." They moved around his narrow kitchen in a careful dance. Declan pulled ingredients from the fridge: cheese, bread, tomatoes. Thea found a pan. Their hands collided, reaching for the same knife, and Declan pulled back like he'd been burned. "Sorry," he muttered. "It's fine." But her heart was racing. While the grilled cheese cooked, Declan leaned against the counter, watching her. Not in a creepy way, in a way that made her feel seen. Actually seen, not just observed. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Thea flipped the sandwich. "Sure." "Your novel," he paused. "The character, what happens to him at the end?" She went very still. This was dangerous territory. "I haven't decided yet." "But you must have an idea. Writers usually know how their stories end." "Not always." She transferred the grilled cheese to a plate, focusing on the task to avoid his eyes. "Sometimes the characters surprise you." "Do they?" Declan moved closer, just half a step, but it closed the distance significantly. "Or do you just finally let them do what they wanted all along?" Thea's breath caught. This wasn't about the novel anymore. Maybe it had never been about the novel. She turned to face him, plate in hand like a shield. "What do you want me to say, Declan?" His gray eyes searched hers. "The truth." "The truth," she repeated. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "The truth is, I'm a coward. I write things down instead of saying them out loud because paper can't reject me." Something shifted in his expression, softened. "Thea," and the worst part, she continued, because if she stopped now, she'd never finish, "is that I've been your neighbor for 3 years, and I've learned everything about you from stolen glances and overheard conversations, and you probably think I'm a stalker, but I'm just in love with me?" Declan finished quietly. The plate nearly slipped from her hands. "I told you, it's fiction." "Right." He took the plate from her, set it on the counter. "Fiction, with my coffee order, and my scar, and the way I apparently trace the rim of my cup when I'm thinking." Oh God, she'd been too specific, way too specific. "Research," Thea tried weakly. Declan smiled, actually smiled. "You're a terrible liar." "I know." She wanted to run, wanted to flee back to her frozen apartment and hide under her duvet until spring. But her legs wouldn't move. "For what it's worth," Declan said, and his voice had gone low, almost rough. "I think you're brave, braver than you think. Brave people don't lie about their feelings. Brave people write them down at all." Thea looked up at him and found he was closer than she'd realized. Close enough to see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. Close enough to count his eyelashes. Close enough to notice the way his gaze dropped to her mouth for just a second before returning to her eyes. "Declan," she whispered, and it wasn't a question or a protest, just his name. He lifted his hand, hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered at her temple, warm and careful. "Tell me to stop," he said. Thea couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything except feel the weight of 3 years crashing into this single moment. The fire popped. She jumped. The spell broke. Declan stepped back, shoving his hands in his pockets. "You should eat, before it gets cold." Thea nodded mutely and picked up the plate with shaking hands. They ate in silence, but everything had changed. The air felt thinner. The space between them felt electric. And when Declan's phone rang, a client, emergency on a site, and he had to leave for a few hours, Thea was almost relieved. She needed time to remember how to breathe. Alone in Declan's apartment, Thea made a decision. She was going to snoop. Not maliciously, just investigatively. If she was going to survive the next 24 hours trapped in proximity with a man who'd almost maybe kissed her, she needed to understand who he really was beyond her romanticized sketchbook version. She started with the bookshelf. Architecture texts, as expected, but also poetry, Mary Oliver, Pablo Neruda, Ocean Vuong, a worn copy of The Remains of the Day. She pulled it out, and a receipt fell from between the pages. Morrison Gallery. A ticket from an exhibit last spring. The same gallery where she'd submitted her portfolio. Had he been there? Had they been in the same space, looking at the same art, and never known? She slid the book back and moved to the mantel. The photos were more revealing up close. Declan with an older woman, his mother, definitely, same eyes, laughing at a kitchen table. A younger Declan, maybe early 20s, standing in front of a half-collapsed barn, and then one that made her heart stop. It was recent. Declan at a coffee shop, and in the blurred background, barely visible through the window, a figure sketching. Dark hair, familiar teal jacket. It was her. He'd taken a photo of the coffee shop, and she was in it. Thea's hands trembled as she picked up the frame. When was this? The metadata was impossible to read, but the coffee shop was the corner place they both frequented. She'd sketched there dozens of times, usually on Sunday mornings when the light was good. Why would he keep this photo? She set it down carefully and turned away, her mind racing. This didn't mean anything. It was probably a coincidence. He probably hadn't even noticed she was in the frame. Except Declan noticed everything. It was his job, noticing details other people missed. Structural problems, historical inaccuracies, the way a building settled over time, the way someone took their coffee. Stop, Thea told herself. You're reading into things. But her feet carried her to his drafting table anyway. The blueprints spread across it were for a Victorian restoration in Kensington. Beautiful work. He'd preserved the original molding, reinforced the structure without modernizing it into oblivion. There were notes in the margins in his precise handwriting, measurements, material specs, and then, tucked under the corner of the blueprint, a piece of paper that didn't belong. A blue envelope, sealed, addressed in handwriting she didn't recognize. No, addressed in handwriting she'd seen once before. On Mrs. Pemberton's Christmas card list. Addressed to Thea Winters, 4A. Thea picked it up with numb fingers. This was for her. In Declan's apartment, under his blueprints. An envelope he'd never sent. She should put it down, should respect his privacy the way she'd want him to respect hers. But her hands were already breaking the seal, sliding out the single page inside. The handwriting was Declan's. The date was last Christmas. Exactly 1 year ago. Dear Tia, I don't know how to start this, so I'll just say it. I notice you. I've noticed you since the day you moved in, when you dropped that box of art supplies and spent 20 minutes chasing charcoal pencils down the stairs. I notice the way you hum when you're drawing. I notice that you drink your coffee outside, even when it's raining, like you're afraid of missing something. I notice that you never look at me for more than 2 seconds, and I can't figure out if it's because you don't see me or because you see me too well. I'm writing this at midnight because I'm a coward, because tomorrow I'll wake up and convince myself that you're just being friendly when you smile at me in the hallway, that I'm imagining the way your hand hesitates before you wave. I'll convince myself that crossing the 10 feet between our doors would be a mistake. But tonight, I'm admitting it. I want to cross that distance. I want to know what you're drawing. I want to hear your stories. I want to be more than the neighbor you're polite to. I'll probably never send this, but if I do, if you're reading this, then I finally found the courage to tell you what I should have said a year ago. I see you, Thea, and I'd like the chance to know you. Declan. The letter slipped from her hands and drifted to the floor. He'd written to her, a year ago, before she'd written her burn letter, before any of this chaos. He'd felt the same things she'd felt, and he'd been too afraid to say it, just like her. They'd wasted a year, a whole year of living 10 feet apart, both wanting the same thing, both too scared to say it. Thea heard footsteps in the hallway. Declan, returning. She scrambled to pick up the letter, to fold it back into the envelope, to shove it under the blueprint exactly how she'd found it. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The door opened. Declan stepped inside, snowflakes melting in his dark hair. He looked tired but stopped short when he saw her face. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. Everything. Nothing. The entire universe had just reorganized itself. Thea's voice broke. She couldn't do this. Couldn't pretend she hadn't just read his year-old confession. Couldn't keep lying. The words came out before she could stop them. "I found your letter." Declan went completely still. His eyes flicked to the drafting table, to the blueprint, to the place where the blue envelope was just barely visible. Color drained from his face. "Thea, you wrote to me," she said. Her voice shook. "Last year, you wrote to me and you never sent it." "I know." He closed the door behind him, movements slow and careful. "I wasn't snooping. I saw it and I thought—" She couldn't finish, couldn't explain the tidal wave of emotions crashing through her chest. Declan crossed the room in 3 strides. "I should have sent it. I wanted to. But every time I tried, I'd convince myself I was reading too much into things. That you were just being kind because we're neighbors." "Kind?" Thea let out a choked laugh. "Declan, I drew you. Every day for 3 years I drew you." His expression cracked. "I know." "You, what?" "I know," he repeated. "I saw. This summer when you left your sketchbook on the fire escape after it rained. I brought it inside to dry it off and I shouldn't have looked, but I did." Thea's entire body went hot, then cold. "You knew? This whole time you knew?" "Not the whole time, just since July. And I didn't know what to do with it, how to bring it up without making it weird." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "And then your letter showed up and I thought, finally we were on the same page." "So you kept my letter," Thea said slowly, pieces clicking into place. "You pretended to believe the novel excuse, but you kept it. Because it was real." Declan's voice went rough. "Because every word in that letter was the same thing I'd been feeling for 3 years. And I was terrified that if I called you on the lie, you'd take it back." "I wouldn't have." "You would have," he interrupted. "You were already taking it back when I opened the door. You looked like you wanted to dissolve into the floor." He was right. God, he was right. Thea pressed her palms to her eyes. "This is insane. We're insane." "Maybe." Declan moved closer and she could feel the heat of him even through her layers of borrowed blankets. "But I'm tired of pretending, aren't you?" She dropped her hands. "Pretending what?" "That we're just neighbors, that we don't feel this." He gestured between them, and the motion encompassed everything. 3 years of almosts, of missed chances, of words swallowed and glances hidden. "I can't keep walking past your door and wondering what would happen if I just knocked. If I just asked you to dinner. If I just told you the truth." "Which is?" Thea whispered. Declan's gray eyes held hers, and this time he didn't look away. "That I've been falling for you in increments. Every time you hummed while drawing. Every time you smiled at Mrs. Pemberton even when she was driving you crazy. Every time you left coffee cups on your fire escape and I had to resist the urge to join you." Thea couldn't breathe. "Declan, your letter said you love me more than you love yourself," he continued, and his voice had gone quiet, gentle. "And I read that line 50 times, trying to figure out what to do with it. Because, Thea, you should love yourself exactly as much as you love anyone else. You should know that you're worth someone crossing that hallway, worth someone taking the risk." Tears burned behind her eyes. "I'm scared." "I know, so am I." He reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and cupped her face in both hands. His palms were warm, slightly rough from work. "But I think we've been scared long enough." The fire crackled. Outside, snow tapped against the windows. Inside, in the warm glow of Declan's apartment, Thea made a choice. She rose up on her toes and kissed him. It wasn't perfect. Their noses bumped. Her hands got tangled in his sweater. But Declan made a sound, soft and surprised and relieved, and kissed her back. And suddenly, nothing else mattered. Not the letters, not the lies, just this. His mouth on hers, his hands sliding into her hair. 3 years of wanting finally becoming real. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Declan pressed his forehead to hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Not because your heat's broken. Stay because you want to." Thea's answer was another kiss. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, finally, they were warm. Thea woke to the smell of coffee and the disorienting realization that she wasn't in her own bed. The room was too warm, the light came from the wrong direction, and there was an arm draped across her waist. Declan's arm. Memory flooded back. The kiss. The second kiss. The third kiss that had led them to his bed, where they'd fallen asleep tangled together, fully clothed, talking until 3 a.m. about everything they'd been too afraid to say for 3 years. She turned carefully, not wanting to wake him. In sleep, Declan looked younger. His dark hair fell across his forehead, and his face had lost the careful control he usually maintained. She wanted to sketch him like this, wanted to capture the vulnerability in the curve of his mouth, the way his hand rested open on the pillow between them. His eyes opened. Gray, steady, focused immediately on her face. "Hi," he said, voice rough with sleep. "Hi." Thea's heart kicked against her ribs. In daylight, everything felt more real, more terrifying. Declan's hand found hers under the blankets, fingers intertwining. "Are you panicking?" "A little," she admitted. "Me too." He smiled, and it was the real smile she'd only glimpsed in photographs, unguarded, but good panic. The kind that means something matters. Before Thea could respond, a sharp knock rattled the door. Mrs. Pemberton's voice carried through the wood. "Declan, dear, I need to borrow your ladder. Are you decent?" They both froze. Thea looked down at their interlocked hands, at the fact that she was very obviously in Declan's bed, wearing yesterday's clothes and probably sporting impressive bedhead. "1 second," Declan called. He squeezed Thea's hand. "You don't have to hide." But old habits died hard. Thea was already sliding out of bed, grabbing her things. "The ladder's in the hallway closet. I should check on my apartment anyway." Something flickered across Declan's face. Disappointment? But he didn't argue. "Okay." Thea slipped into the bathroom while Declan dealt with Mrs. Pemberton. She stared at her reflection. Kiss-swollen lips, tangled hair, eyes too bright. She looked like someone who'd been thoroughly undone and put back together differently. When she emerged, Mrs. Pemberton was gone. Declan stood by the kitchenette, 2 coffee mugs in his hands. He'd made hers exactly right without asking. "So," he said carefully, "what happens now?" Thea took the mug, using it as a shield. "I don't know. What do you want to happen?" "I want you to stay for breakfast." Declan set his own mug down. "I want to take you to dinner. I want to spend the rest of Christmas week getting to know you, without 10 feet of hallway between us." It sounded perfect. It sounded terrifying. "My portfolio," Thea blurted. "I need to proof it. The gallery deadline is the 27th. "Then we'll proof it together." Declan moved closer. "Unless you're looking for an excuse to run away." She was. God help her, part of her absolutely was. Because wanting something this much meant it could hurt that much more when it ended. "I'm not good at this," Thea whispered, letting people in. "I know." Declan tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture already becoming familiar. "But you let me read your letter. That's a start." Thea leaned into his touch, fighting every instinct that screamed at her to retreat to safety. "Okay. Okay? Breakfast and portfolio proofing and," she took a breath, "and whatever comes next." Declan's smile could have lit the entire building. He kissed her forehead, soft and deliberate. Whatever comes next. This one. Declan tapped the illustration of a Victorian library, all shadow and amber light. This is the strongest piece. Thea leaned over his shoulder, close enough to smell his shampoo, cedar, and something clean. They'd been working for 2 hours, her laptop spread across his kitchen table, portfolio layouts scattered between empty coffee mugs. You think so? I was worried it's too dark. It's atmospheric, that's different. Declan zoomed in on a detail, the way Thea had rendered dust motes in a shaft of light. Morrison Gallery loves this aesthetic. I've seen their exhibits. Thea straightened. You go to Morrison Gallery? Sometimes, when they have architectural photography shows. He glanced up at her. Actually, I was there last spring, the exhibit on London interiors. The receipt in his book. She'd been at that exhibit too, sketching in the corner while a tour group moved through. I was there, Thea said slowly. In March. I spent 3 hours in the Victorian wing. Declan's expression shifted. I know, I saw you. You, what? You were wearing that teal jacket, sitting on the floor by the fireplace installation, completely absorbed. His voice went quiet. I almost said hello, got within maybe 5 feet of you, but you looked so focused and I didn't want to interrupt. Thea's throat tightened. We were in the same room. We've been in a lot of same rooms, Declan said. Just took us a while to actually see each other. Before Thea could respond, her phone buzzed. A notification from Morrison Gallery. Portfolio received. Initial review scheduled for December 28th. Response by January 2nd. They got it, Thea breathed. Oh my God, they actually got it. Declan grinned. Of course they got it. You sent it on time. No, I mean, she laughed, slightly manic. I've been submitting to them for 2 years. They've never even acknowledged receipt before. This is the first time they've given me a review date. Because this is your best work. Declan stood, pulled her into a hug she hadn't realized she needed. They'd be idiots not to recognize that. Thea buried her face in his shoulder, letting herself have this moment of hope. His arms tightened around her, solid and steady. Her phone buzzed again. This time a text from Margot. 911. Call me now. Thea pulled back. I need to. My friend's freaking out about something. Go ahead. Declan released her, already moving to give her privacy. But Thea caught his hand. Stay. You should probably hear this anyway. She called Margot on speaker. Her friend's voice exploded through the line before Thea could even say hello. Please tell me you're joking. Please tell me you did not actually kiss your neighbor after the letter disaster. Thea's face went hot. How did you? You posted on Instagram, Margot said flatly. A photo of a fireplace with the caption, warmest Christmas yet. And I know that's not your apartment because your apartment looks like a Siberian prison cell right now. Thea grabbed her phone, opened Instagram. Sure enough, she'd posted last night at 1 a.m., slightly drunk on wine and happiness, a blurry photo of Declan's fireplace. Oh no, she whispered. Oh yes, Margot continued. And your college roommate commented asking if you finally moved in with mystery neighbor guy. And honestly, Thea, I'm hurt you didn't call me immediately with updates. Declan was trying very hard not to laugh. Thea elbowed him. Hi, Margot, Declan said, leaning toward the phone. I'm the mystery neighbor guy. Silence. Then, he has a sexy voice. Okay, I approve. Thea, keep him. Margot, but seriously, babe, are you okay? Last night you were in crisis mode, and now you're posting romantic fireplace photos. That's a big swing. Thea looked at Declan, who was watching her with an expression that made her chest ache. I'm okay. Better than okay. I think. You think? I know, Thea corrected. I'm good, really good. Then I'm happy for you. Margot's voice softened. But if mystery neighbor guy hurts you, I'm flying to London and he's getting buried under a Victorian floorboard. Noted, Declan said solemnly. After they hung up, Thea deleted the Instagram post with shaking hands. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I wasn't thinking about the fact that people will know, Declan finished, that we're not just neighbors anymore. Yeah, Thea set her phone down. Is that weird? That I'm not ready for people to know yet? Declan considered this. Are you not ready, or are you scared? Both? He pulled her close again, resting his chin on top of her head. We can go as slow as you need. But Thea, eventually I'm going to want to tell people. I'm going to want to take you places and hold your hand in public and not hide the fact that I'm completely gone for you. Thea's heart stuttered. You're gone for me? Completely, Declan confirmed. Have been for a while. She tilted her head back to look at him. That's really inconvenient timing, considering I just emotionally vomited all over you via letter. Best letter I've ever received. He kissed her nose. Even if you did try to take it back. I'm an idiot. You're cautious. There's a difference. Declan's expression turned serious. But I need you to know, I'm not going to hurt you on purpose. And if I do accidentally, I need you to tell me instead of running away. Thea swallowed hard. I'm really good at running away. I know. I've watched you do it for 3 years. He cupped her face gently. But I'm not going anywhere. So you're going to have to get used to me being around. That sounds awful, Thea said, but she was smiling. Terrible, Declan agreed and kissed her. This is fine, Thea told herself as she stood outside Declan's door, holding a bottle of wine and experiencing low-grade panic. This is just Christmas Eve dinner. You've eaten dinner before. You know how forks work. She'd gone back to her freezing apartment that afternoon to shower and change, partly because she needed clean clothes, and partly because she'd needed space to process the fact that her entire life had rearranged itself in 48 hours. She'd spent the time sketching, frantic, messy drawings trying to capture the feeling of Declan's hands in her hair, the sound of his laugh, the way he looked at her like she was something worth studying. Now she was back, wearing her nicest sweater, and terrified. The door opened before she could knock. Declan stood there in dark jeans and a gray Henley, barefoot, hair slightly damp. He looked unfairly good. You're early, he said, smiling. I'm nervous, Thea admitted. Thought I'd get it over with. Declan's expression softened. He took the wine, set it aside, and pulled her inside. It's just me. That's the problem. She let him take her coat. When it was unrequited pining, I could imagine you were perfect. Now I have to deal with the fact that you're real, and I'm probably going to mess this up. Thea, Declan turned her to face him. I'm terrified too. I haven't done this, he gestured between them, in a long time. My last relationship ended badly, and I convinced myself it was easier to be alone. This was new information. Thea filed it away. How badly? She wanted someone more outgoing, said I was too quiet, too focused on work. Declan's jaw tightened. Told me I'd make a great roommate but a terrible partner. That's bullshit, Thea said immediately. Maybe, but it stuck. He led her to the kitchen, where something smelled incredible. Garlic, herbs, tomatoes. So when you moved in and I found myself noticing you, I shut it down. Told myself it was better to stay neighbors than risk another failure. Thea hopped onto the counter, watching him stir a pot of sauce. What changed? Your letter. Declan glanced at her. Reading it felt like permission. Like maybe I wasn't imagining the connection. Maybe you felt it too. I felt it, Thea confirmed quietly. I feel it. They ate dinner at his small table, candles flickering between them because Declan had apparently decided to make this romantic. The pasta was perfect. The wine was better. And somewhere between the main course and dessert, Thea realized she'd stopped being nervous. This was easy. Talking to Declan was easy in a way she hadn't expected. All their years of careful distance dissolving into the kind of conversation she'd only had with Margot. Rambling and honest and occasionally ridiculous. Wait, Thea said, laughing. You're telling me you became an architect because of a cartoon? Hey, The Hunchback of Notre Dame is a masterpiece of Gothic architecture appreciation. Declan grinned. I was 7. The cathedral made an impression. That's actually adorable. What about you? When did you decide to be an illustrator? Thea traced the rim of her wineglass. I didn't decide, it just sort of happened. I was terrible at everything else, sports, math, talking to people, but I could draw. It was the one thing that made sense. You're not terrible at talking to people. I'm terrible at talking to people I care about, Thea corrected. Everyone else is fine, but the more I care, the more I freeze up. Declan reached across the table, covered her hand with his. You're talking to me now. That's different. You already know the worst parts. The worst parts? He looked genuinely confused. Thea, you wrote me a love letter. That's not a worst part. That's incredibly brave. I sent it by accident. But you wrote it on purpose. Declan squeezed her hand. You put words to something most people never admit, even to themselves. That takes courage. Thea looked at their joined hands, at the way his thumb traced gentle circles on her wrist. I don't feel brave. You don't have to feel it. You just have to do it. He stood, pulled her up with him. Come here. She followed him to the window. Outside, snow fell in thick, lazy flakes, turning London into something from a Victorian novel. The street lamps glowed amber. Somewhere, church bells chimed the hour. Declan stood behind her, arms wrapped around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. I'm going to tell you something, and I don't want you to panic. Thea's heart rate spiked. That's a terrible way to start a sentence. I read your letter 17 times, Declan said quietly, memorized every line. And the part where you said you love me more than you loved yourself? That's the part I keep thinking about. Why? Thea barely breathed. Because I want to be the person who helps you love yourself as much as you love other people. His arms tightened. I want to be the person you trust enough to be messy with. Thea turned in his arms, looking up at him. I'm going to be really messy. Good. Declan kissed her forehead. I like messy. She kissed him then, proper and deep, pouring 3 years of wanting into it. He responded immediately, one hand sliding into her hair, the other pressing her closer. They kissed until the candles burned low and the snow piled high on the windowsill, until Thea forgot why she'd been nervous in the first place. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Declan rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered. Not because your apartment's cold. Stay because you want to. Thea thought about running, about retreating to the safety of her own space, her own bed, where she could sketch and process and protect herself from the terrifying possibility of happiness. Then she thought about waking up next to him, about morning coffee and shared silences, and all the small intimacies she'd never let herself imagine. Okay, she said. Declan's smile was brilliant. Yeah? Yeah. Thea kissed him again, softer this time. I want to stay. A sound woke Thea. Soft, rhythmic, familiar but out of place. She opened her eyes to early morning light filtering through unfamiliar curtains. Declan's bedroom, his bed, his warmth beside her. They'd fallen asleep, tangled together after hours of talking. The kind of conversation that meandered through childhood memories and secret fears, and the revelation that they'd both read the same obscure poetry collection in college. The sound came again, paper rustling. Thea turned her head carefully. Declan sat propped against the headboard, still shirtless, reading something by the pale dawn light. Not a book, pages. Her letter. He was rereading her letter. Thea went very still. She should probably announce she was awake. Should probably make a joke about him still having it. But instead she watched him through barely open eyes, cataloging the way he touched the paper, gentle, like it might dissolve. His finger traced a line of her handwriting. His mouth moved silently, forming words she'd written in desperation. When he reached the end of the page, he didn't flip to the next one, just sat there, staring at that final line. I love you more than I love myself. Something in his expression made Thea's chest ache. He looked sad. No, not sad. Determined. Like he just made a decision. I know you're awake, Declan said quietly, not looking away from the letter. Thea's breath caught. How long have you known? Your breathing changed about 3 minutes ago. Now he did look at her, and his gray eyes were intense. I wasn't trying to hide this, just wanted to read it one more time. Why? Thea pushed herself up, pulling the blanket with her. Declan set the letter aside carefully. Because I want to memorize it, every word. So when you get scared and try to convince yourself this isn't real, I can remind you what you wrote. I'm not going to. You are, he interrupted gently. You're going to wake up one day and panic, wonder if you made a mistake, start building walls again. He reached for her hand. And when that happens, I need to remember exactly what you said. Not my interpretation, your actual words. Thea stared at their joined hands. You have a lot of faith in me. No, I have faith in what we're building. Declan pulled her closer until she was tucked against his side. But I'm not naive. I know this is scary for you. I know you're used to running. I don't run, Thea protested weakly. You've been running from me for 3 years. He wasn't wrong. She had been running, friendly but distant, never letting conversations go too deep, always having an excuse to cut interactions short. What if I run again? Thea asked. What if I wake up tomorrow and freak out and ruin everything? Then I'll give you space. Declan's voice was steady. But I won't let you disappear completely. I'll knock on your door, bring you coffee, remind you that you wrote me a letter, and I wrote you one back, and we both wanted the same thing. Thea tilted her head to look at him. Your letter, the one from last Christmas. Can I read it again? Something flickered across Declan's face. Why? Because you read mine 17 times. Seems only fair. He kissed the top of her head, then reached for the nightstand drawer. The blue envelope emerged, more worn than when Thea had found it. He must have read it often too. Handled it the way she'd handled a photograph she kept of him, accidentally captured in the background of a building she'd been sketching, his profile just visible through a window. Thea unfolded the letter, reading it properly this time instead of in a panic. I notice you. Those 3 words hit differently in morning light, wrapped in Declan's arms. He noticed her, had noticed her all along. Every hummed melody, every coffee ritual, every time she'd stood in the rain because she couldn't bear to miss the quality of light. You said you were a coward, Thea said, but you're not. You wrote this. And didn't send it. Declan's arms tightened. That's the definition of cowardice. No. Thea twisted to face him properly. Writing it at all is brave. Not everyone can name what they want. Can you? The question was soft. Name what you want now? Thea looked at him, really looked. Morning stubble, sleep-mussed hair, eyes that watched her like she was something precious. This man who read architecture journals and remembered her coffee order and noticed when she hummed. This, she said simply. I want this. You. Us. Declan's smile was slow and devastating. Then that's what we'll build. He kissed her, and Thea kissed back, tasting coffee and promise, and the terrifying possibility of something lasting. Outside, London was waking up. Inside, they were creating something new. When they finally pulled apart, Declan tucked her letter back into his nightstand, alongside his own. We should probably keep these, he said. Evidence for when we're both being stubborn. Thea laughed. You think we'll need evidence? I think, Declan said, pulling her back down into the warmth of his bed. We're both good at overthinking. These letters remind us what the truth felt like before we complicated it. He was right. In those letters, everything had been simple. Raw. No second guessing, no what-ifs. Just feeling, distilled into words. Thea settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. What time is it? Early. 6 maybe. We should probably get up. Neither of them moved. In a minute, Declan murmured, already pulling her closer. Thea closed her eyes, letting herself have this. The weight of his arm, the rhythm of his breathing, the knowledge that she didn't have to run anymore. Not yet. The knock came at 8 a.m., loud, persistent, followed by Mrs. Pemberton's voice. Declan! Thea! I know you're both in there, and we're doing Christmas breakfast in 20 minutes. No excuses. Thea jerked awake. Declan groaned, burying his face in her hair. She can't possibly know, Thea started. She knows, Declan said. Mrs. Pemberton knows everything that happens in this building. I'm pretty sure she has surveillance equipment. Another knock. I made cinnamon rolls. They're getting cold. We'll be there, Declan called. Footsteps retreated down the hall. Thea looked at Declan. We don't have to go. She made cinnamon rolls. Declan sat up, rubbing his face. You haven't had Mrs. Pemberton's cinnamon rolls. They're worth social discomfort. 30 minutes later, they descended to Mrs. Pemberton's ground floor apartment. Thea had run to her own place to change, brush her teeth, and attempt to look like she hadn't spent the night making out with her neighbor. Judging by Declan's amused expression when she met him in the hallway, she'd failed. Mrs. Pemberton's apartment was decorated like a Victorian Christmas explosion. Garlands everywhere, a tree that touched the ceiling. Exactly 12 nutcrackers arranged on the mantel. The table was set for 8. Several other building residents had been corralled into attendance. There you are, Mrs. Pemberton beamed at them. I was starting to think you'd slept through Christmas. We were, Thea started. Getting reacquainted, Mrs. Pemberton finished, eyes twinkling. Yes, dear, we all heard the thumping against the wall. Thea wanted to die. Declan's ears went red. That was furniture, he said. Moving furniture. Of course it was. Mrs. Pemberton patted his cheek. Sit, both of you, next to each other naturally. The breakfast was actually lovely once Thea got past the mortification. The couple from 3C, Sarah and Marcus, shared stories about their first Christmas together, which had apparently involved food poisoning and a broken heater. The elderly man from 2A, Mr. Chen, showed them photos of his grandchildren. Mrs. Pemberton orchestrated everything like a conductor, making sure plates stayed full and conversation kept flowing. At one point, Sarah leaned over to Thea. We're glad, you know, that you two finally figured it out. Finally? Thea repeated. Honey, the entire building's been watching you circle each other for years, Sarah grinned. We had a running bet on when you'd crack. I said Valentine's Day. Marcus said New Year's. Mrs. Pemberton said Christmas. She won. You had a bet, Thea said faintly. A friendly bet, nothing serious. Sarah squeezed her arm. But really, you're good together. Even we could see it, and we're usually oblivious. After breakfast, Declan walked Thea back upstairs. They stood in the hallway between their two doors, the space that had felt so vast for 3 years, now feeling like nothing. So, Declan said, which apartment do we go to? Thea looked at her door, then his. I need to grab my sketchbook, and my charger, and probably actual clothes. Bring them to mine, Declan caught her hand, or I can come to yours, or we can keep going back and forth, whatever works. This is weird, right? Thea asked. Good weird, but weird? Extremely weird, Declan pulled her closer. But I like it. She kissed him because she could, because they were standing in the hallway in broad daylight and she didn't have to hide anymore. When she pulled back, Declan was smiling. What? Thea asked. Just thinking about that bet. Mrs. Pemberton's going to be insufferable. She already is insufferable. True. Declan kissed her forehead. Grab your stuff. I'll make more coffee. Thea collected her things in a daze. A week ago, she'd been alone in her freezing apartment, terrified of her own feelings. Now she was packing an overnight bag to stay with the man she'd loved in silence for 3 years. Her phone buzzed. Margot. Merry Christmas! How's mystery neighbor guy? Thea typed back. Good, really good. I'm staying at his place. The response was immediate. Excuse me? Followed by, I need details. All the details. Thea smiled. Later, promise. She grabbed her bag and headed back to 4B. Declan had made coffee and was pulling out his laptop. I thought we could work on your portfolio presentation, he said. Morrison Gallery likes formal presentations. I can help format it if you want. You don't have to. I want to. Declan pulled her onto the couch beside him. Besides, I like watching you work. The way you talk about your illustrations, the decisions behind them. It's like getting to see how your brain works. They spent the morning working in comfortable silence, broken only by Declan's occasional observations or Thea's frustrated sighs when text refused to align properly. At some point, Declan ordered lunch delivery. At another point, Thea found herself falling asleep on his shoulder while he read architecture journals. It felt domestic, settled, like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. Hey, Declan said softly, waking her. Food's here. Thea blinked up at him. What time is it? 2. You were out for almost an hour. Sorry. Don't be. He brushed hair from her face. You looked peaceful. They ate pad thai on the couch, watching snow fall outside. Thea's phone buzzed with Christmas messages from her mom, from college friends, from clients. She answered them all one-handed, her other hand trapped in Declan's. Question, Declan said. What do we tell people about us? Thea tensed. What do you mean? I mean, when people ask if you're seeing anyone, what do you want to say? I don't know. Thea set her phone down. What do you want to say? The truth. Declan's thumb traced circles on her wrist. That I'm seeing you, that it's new but it feels right. What if it falls apart? The question escaped before Thea could stop it. What if we ruin what we had? We can't ruin something we never really had, Declan pointed out. 3 years of saying hi in the hallway isn't a relationship. It's potential. And I'd rather risk potential than wonder, what if, for the rest of my life. Thea looked at him, this man who'd read her letter 17 times, who made her coffee the way she liked it, who was willing to be patient with her fear. Okay, she said, the truth. We're seeing each other. Declan's smile was worth the terror. The panic hit at 4 p.m. No warning. Just sudden, overwhelming certainty that Thea had made a catastrophic mistake. She was in Declan's bathroom, staring at her toothbrush next to his, and suddenly she couldn't breathe. This was too much too fast. She'd known this man as a neighbor for 3 years, and as something more for 3 days. 3 days. And she was already leaving her things in his apartment, sleeping in his bed, making plans like this was permanent. What if it wasn't permanent? What if they'd built this entire thing on fantasy and proximity, and it collapsed the second real life intruded? What if she'd ruined the best friendship she'd never actually had? Thea gripped the sink. Her reflection looked panicked, wild-eyed. You're fine, she told herself. This is fine. But her hands were shaking. She emerged from the bathroom to find Declan on the phone, frowning at his laptop. Work call. Something about a site inspection. He glanced up, smiled at her, and returned to the conversation. Thea stood frozen. He'd smiled like seeing her was easy, natural, like he wasn't questioning every decision that had led them here. Maybe because he wasn't. Maybe Declan was certain in a way Thea had never been certain about anything. She grabbed her phone, retreated to the far corner of the apartment, texted Margot, I think I'm having a panic attack. Margot called immediately. Talk to me. I can't do this, Thea whispered, watching Declan through the space. It's too much, too fast. I'm going to mess it up. Okay, first, breathe. Margot's voice was calm. In for 4, out for 4. Do it. Thea breathed. It didn't help. Second, Margot continued, what specifically are you panicking about? Everything. The fact that I barely know him. The fact that I like him too much. The fact that I've already basically moved in and we haven't even been on a real date. Define real date. I don't know, somewhere public, with other people around. Proof that this works outside his apartment. Declan ended his call, looked around for her, spotted her in the corner, on the phone, and his expression shifted from easy to concerned. I have to go, Thea said to Margot. Wait, Thea hung up. Declan was already crossing to her. Hey, he said softly. What's wrong? Nothing. Thea. She looked at him, really looked. 3 days. She'd known this version of him for 3 days. How could she possibly know if this was real? I need to go to my apartment, Thea said. Declan went still. Okay. Do you want me to come with you? No, I need space. Something flickered across his face. Hurt, quickly masked. Okay. Thea grabbed her bag, moving on autopilot. This was good. Space was good. She'd go to her apartment, process, figure out if this feeling in her chest was terror or happiness, because right now they felt exactly the same. At the door, Declan caught her hand. Thea, wait. She stopped but didn't turn around. You're allowed to be scared, Declan said, but please don't disappear on me. If you need space, take it, but tell me it's space, not goodbye. It's space, Thea managed. Okay. He squeezed her hand once, then released it. I'll be here when you're ready. Thea fled. Her apartment was freezing. The repair service still hadn't come. She cranked the broken heater uselessly, wrapped herself in blankets, and stared at her sketchbook. The pages were full of Declan. Declan drinking coffee, Declan laughing, Declan in profile, Declan's hands. 3 years of documentation. 3 years of carefully controlled longing that had exploded into messy reality. She'd wanted this. For 3 years, she'd wanted exactly this. So why was she sitting alone in her frozen apartment instead of in his warm one? Her phone buzzed. Declan, no pressure. Just wanted you to know I'm not upset. Take whatever time you need. Thea stared at the message. He wasn't angry, wasn't demanding explanation, just giving her space. Another text. Also, your apartment is freezing, and I'm worried about hypothermia, so if space needs to happen, can it happen somewhere with heat? Despite everything, Thea smiled. She looked around her apartment, cold, empty, safe in its emptiness. Nothing could hurt her here because she'd never let anyone close enough to hurt her. Then she looked at her phone, at Declan's messages, at the evidence that someone was willing to wait. Thea made a decision. Thea knocked on Declan's door at 7 p.m. She'd spent 3 hours in her freezing apartment thinking in circles before finally admitting the truth. Running away hadn't made her feel better. It had just made her cold and alone. Declan opened the door immediately, like he'd been waiting. His expression was carefully neutral. Can I come in? Thea asked. He stepped aside. The apartment was warm. He'd built up the fire. His laptop sat open on the coffee table, work abandoned. A mug of tea steamed beside it, her favorite kind, the chamomile blend she kept in her own apartment. You made tea, Thea said stupidly. You've been gone for 3 hours. I figured you'd come back cold. Declan crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. Or not come back at all. I almost didn't, Thea set her bag down. I sat in my apartment and convinced myself this was a mistake, that we were moving too fast, that I should just cut my losses now before I got hurt. And his voice was even, too even. And I realized something. Thea moved closer. I've been protecting myself for so long that I forgot what it feels like to actually want something, someone. And yeah, this is terrifying, but sitting alone in that frozen apartment, that was worse. Declan's expression softened fractionally. You're scared. I'm terrified, Thea corrected, but I don't want to be scared alone anymore. So what are you saying? Thea took a breath. I'm saying I want to try, really try. Not just hiding in your apartment avoiding the real world. I want to go on dates, meet your friends, let you meet mine, do all the normal relationship things that prove this works outside of a weird Christmas bubble. Normal relationship things, Declan repeated. Yeah, like, I don't know, dinner, movies, boring grocery shopping trips. A smile tugged at Declan's mouth. You want to go grocery shopping with me? I want to do everything with you, Thea said, and her voice cracked. That's the problem. I want it too much and I don't know how to do this without completely falling apart. Declan pushed off the wall, closing the distance between them. So fall apart. I'll help you put yourself back together. That's not fair to you. Let me decide what's fair to me. He cupped her face gently. Thea, I told you, I'm not going anywhere. You running to your apartment for 3 hours doesn't change that. You having a panic attack doesn't change that. You being messy and complicated and scared doesn't change that. How are you so sure? Thea whispered. Because I spent 3 years watching you from a distance and wanting more. And now I have more, and it's better than anything I imagined. Declan's thumb brushed her cheek. So yeah, I'm sure, even when you're not. Thea kissed him, desperate and apologetic and grateful all at once. Declan responded immediately, pulling her close, and the relief that flooded through her was almost painful. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Want to hear something funny? What? I had a panic attack too, about an hour after you left. Thea pulled back. What? Called my sister, told her I'd probably scared you off by being too intense. Declan smiled ruefully. She told me to give you space and trust you'd come back if you wanted to. You have a sister? 2, both older, both very opinionated. He led her to the couch, pulled her down beside him. They're going to love you. Or interrogate you. Possibly both. You told them about me? I texted them yesterday. Declan handed her the tea. Couldn't really not mention that I'd finally worked up the courage to act on 3 years of pining. What did they say? That it was about time, and that if I messed it up, they'd drive to London and fix it themselves. He grinned. They're very protective. Thea sipped the tea, letting the warmth spread through her. I want to meet them, your sisters, and your parents, and anyone else who's important to you. Yeah? Yeah, she set the mug down. But maybe after New Year's? I need like 3 more days to prepare for that level of social interaction. Declan laughed. Fair enough. They sat in comfortable silence watching the fire. Thea let herself lean into him, let herself feel his arm around her shoulders, let herself stop fighting the wanting. Declan, she said eventually, thank you for not being angry that I ran. Thank you for coming back. He kissed the top of her head. But Thea, next time you panic, and there will be a next time, can you panic here? With me? Instead of alone? I'll try. That's all I'm asking. Outside, snow continued to fall. Inside, they were figuring it out. Messy and imperfect, and absolutely right. Day 4, Thea thought, waking up to Declan's arm draped across her waist. 4 days since the letter. 4 days since everything changed. It didn't feel real. Any of it. The fact that she was in his bed. The fact that she'd panicked yesterday and he'd let her. The fact that she'd come back and he'd been waiting. People didn't do this. Didn't wait. Didn't stick around when things got messy. Except Declan apparently did. Thea carefully extracted herself from his embrace and padded to the kitchen. Her apartment's heat was supposedly fixed. Mrs. Pemberton had texted yesterday, but she hadn't checked. Didn't particularly want to check, because checking meant acknowledging she had her own space to return to, and right now the idea of leaving made her chest tight. Codependent, her therapist's voice said in her head. You're being codependent. I'm being in a relationship, Thea muttered, starting the coffee maker. Talking to yourself? Declan appeared in the doorway, hair sticking up. That's new. Just having an argument with my therapist. Your therapist isn't here. Doesn't stop her from being judgy in my head. Thea poured 2 mugs. She'd probably say we're moving too fast. Declan accepted his coffee. Are we? I don't know. What's the normal timeline for going from neighbors to basically cohabiting? I don't think there is a normal timeline. Declan leaned against the counter. Every relationship is different. That's annoyingly reasonable. He smiled. Want to do something annoyingly normal today? Since you requested normal relationship things. Like what? There's a bookshop in Notting Hill. Independent place. Good architecture. Declan watched her over the rim of his mug. We could go, together, in public, hold hands and everything. Thea's heart did something complicated. Like a date? Exactly like a date. The idea should have been simple. A bookshop, holding hands, basic relationship activities. But Thea's brain immediately conjured 17 ways it could go wrong. They'd run into someone who knew her, or him, or both. People would know they were together, would have opinions about it. Okay, Thea said before her brain could talk her out of it. Declan's eyebrows rose. Yeah? Yeah, let's be annoyingly normal. 2 hours later, they stood outside Declan's apartment, both dressed for actual public interaction. Thea had changed her outfit 4 times before settling on jeans and her teal jacket. Declan wore his usual, dark jeans, boots, a gray coat that made his eyes look almost silver. He held out his hand. Thea stared at it. This is the part where you take it, Declan said, amused. I know, I'm just... She grabbed his hand before she could overthink it. Okay, done. Let's go. They made it 3 steps before Mrs. Pemberton's door opened. Off on a date? She called cheerfully. Yes, Declan said. Just a walk, Thea said at the same time. Mrs. Pemberton's smile was knowing. Have fun on your walk date. Don't forget your keys. The tube was crowded with Boxing Day shoppers. Declan kept Thea's hand firmly in his, navigating the crowd with ease. She focused on his grip, warm, steady, and tried not to think about the fact that they were doing this. Actually doing this, being a couple in public. The bookshop was perfect. 3 stories of crammed shelves, narrow staircases, the smell of old paper, impossibility. Thea immediately gravitated to the art section. Declan followed, browsing nearby architecture books but mostly watching her. You're staring, Thea said without looking up from an illustration compilation. I like watching you around books. You get this look. What look? Like you found something precious. Declan moved closer. Do you want that one? Thea glanced at the price tag. It's expensive. That's not what I asked. She did want it. The illustrations were gorgeous, contemporary artists reimagining classic fairy tales. The kind of book she'd referenced for years. I want it, she admitted. Declan took it from her hands. Then we're getting it. You don't have to. I want to. He was already heading toward the counter. Consider it a 4 days in gift. That's not a thing. It is now. Thea followed him, torn between protesting and letting herself have this. She let herself have it. Declan paid while she browsed the nearby display, and when he returned with the bag, he pressed it into her hands like he'd just given her something significant. Thank you, Thea said softly. You're welcome. Declan laced their fingers together again. Coffee? There's a place around the corner. They sat in a corner booth, Americanos steaming between them. Outside, London rushed past. Inside, it was quiet, intimate. So, Declan said, how's the annoyingly normal date going? Pretty normal, Thea smiled. Maybe even good. Just good? Great, she corrected. It's going great. And it was. Despite her panic, despite her overthinking, despite every instinct screaming that this couldn't last. Sitting across from Declan in a cramped coffee shop, watching him steal sips of her drink when he thought she wasn't looking, this felt right. Can I ask you something? Thea said. Always. What made you read my letter the first time? Like, really read it instead of just skimming? Declan considered this. The handwriting. I recognized it from the Christmas card you'd sent before. And then I saw my name and... He paused. I thought maybe I'd been imagining things. The way you looked at me sometimes. The way you'd smile and then look away. But the letter was proof. Proof that you saw me too. I saw you, Thea confirmed quietly. For 3 years, I saw you. And now? Now I'm still seeing you, just closer. Declan reached across the table, took her hand. I like closer. Me too, Thea squeezed his fingers, even though it terrifies me. We can be terrified together. They finished their coffee slowly, in no rush to return to the cold. When they finally left, dusk was falling. Declan kept her hand in his the entire walk back, through the tube crowds and the slushy streets and up the Victorian staircase to their hallway. At the landing, Thea stopped. My apartment or yours? Which do you want? Thea looked at her door, then his, then back at him. Yours, if that's okay. Always okay. Declan unlocked 4B, let her in first. But Thea, you know you don't need permission, right? This is your space too, for as long as you want it. For as long as you want it. The words settled somewhere deep in her chest. Not forever, not a promise, just an open door. Thank you, Thea said, for today, for all of this. Thank you for trying, Declan pulled her close, for not running. I mean, I ran yesterday, but you came back. He kissed her forehead. That's what matters. Thea let herself sink into him, let herself believe that maybe this could work, that maybe she could have this, closeness without claustrophobia, intimacy without terror. Outside, London settled into evening. Inside, they were building something new, something neither of them quite knew how to name yet, but both were willing to try. The email came at midnight. Thea had been half asleep, curled against Declan's side when her phone buzzed. She reached for it automatically, squinting at the screen. Morrison Gallery, Portfolio Review. Her heart stopped. She sat bolt upright, fully awake. What? Declan mumbled, woken by her movement. Email. From the gallery. Thea's hands shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. Oh God, I can't open it. Declan sat up, instantly alert. Do you want me to open it? Yes, no, I don't know. Thea thrust the phone at him. You do it, read it out loud. If it's a rejection, I need to hear it in someone else's voice. Declan took the phone gently. Thea, whatever it says, just read it. He opened the email, read silently. His expression gave nothing away. Declan, Thea said, voice tight, please. They want to meet with you, Declan said slowly. January 2nd, in person, to discuss a potential commission. The world tilted. What? Your portfolio demonstrates exceptional technical skill and narrative cohesion, Declan read. We're particularly interested in your Victorian interior series and would like to discuss commissioning 3 pieces for our spring exhibition. Please confirm your availability for a meeting. Thea grabbed the phone, read it herself. The words didn't change. Commission, spring exhibition, interest. I need to. She was moving before the thought finished forming, grabbing her laptop from Declan's desk. I need to respond. What do I say? How formal should I be? Thea, Declan caught her shoulders. Breathe first. I can't breathe. This is huge. Morrison Gallery doesn't commission unknowns. They work with established artists. I'm not established, I'm just... You're talented, Declan interrupted firmly, and they recognized it. This is what you've been working toward. Thea looked at him. I'm freaking out. I know, he smiled, but good freaking out? Terrifying freaking out. She pulled up her email, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Help me write this. I can't be coherent right now. They spent the next hour crafting a response. Professional, but not stiff. Grateful, but not desperate. Thea rewrote it 17 times before Declan finally took the laptop and hit send himself. Done, he said. No more edits. Thea stared at the screen. I just agreed to meet with Morrison Gallery. You did. What if I screw it up? You won't. You don't know that. Declan pulled her back to bed, laptop abandoned. I know you've been preparing for this for years. I know your work is incredible. And I know that even if this particular meeting doesn't go perfectly, you're talented enough that other opportunities will come. Thea buried her face in his shoulder. You have a lot of faith in me. Someone has to, since you don't have enough in yourself. He kissed the top of her head. Besides, I've seen your sketchbooks, plural. You've drawn the same Victorian staircase 47 different ways, perfecting the light. That's dedication. You counted? I pay attention. His arms tightened. Now try to sleep. You're going to need it for all the celebrating tomorrow. But Thea couldn't sleep. Her mind raced. Commission details, spring exhibition, the possibility that her work might hang in Morrison Gallery where actual collectors would see it. I can feel you thinking, Declan murmured after a while. Sorry. Don't be. He shifted so he could see her face. Tell me what you're thinking. That this doesn't feel real, any of it. Thea gestured between them. You, the gallery, the fact that a week ago I was alone and now everything's changed. Is that good or bad? Both? Neither? She tried to find the words. It's like I spent 3 years building this careful life where nothing could hurt me because nothing was close enough to hurt. And now everything's close. You're close. The gallery opportunity is close. And it's terrifying because I actually care about keeping it. Declan was quiet for a moment. You want to know what I think? Always. I think you're stronger than you believe. Strong enough to care about things even when caring is scary. He brushed hair from her face. And I think the version of you who wrote that letter, who put 3 years of feeling onto paper, she knew that. She was ready for this. What if she was wrong? Then we figure it out together. Declan's voice was steady. But Thea, I don't think she was wrong. I think she was brave enough to take a risk, and it's paying off. Thea kissed him, soft and grateful, and still a little scared. Thank you. For what? For being here. For not thinking I'm ridiculous for freaking out at midnight about an email. You're not ridiculous. Declan settled back down, pulling her with him. You're an artist about to get her big break. You're allowed to freak out. This time, Thea let herself relax. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, things could actually work out. The gallery, Declan, all of it. Sleep came easier with that thought. Thea woke to voices. Declan's voice, specifically, coming from the kitchen. Talking to someone. Laughing. She checked the time. 8 a.m. Day 5. The day after the gallery email. The day she needed to call her mother and explain everything. Thea emerged from the bedroom to find Declan on his phone, spatula in hand, making breakfast. Yeah, I know, he was saying, but she's actually coming to the meeting with me. First time introducing someone to a client. He paused, listening, smiled. Okay, I'll be careful. Love you too. He hung up, noticed Thea. Morning, that was my sister Clara. She wanted to know why I was so cheerful at 8 a.m. on a holiday week. You told her about me? I told her about the gallery news. The you part came up naturally. Declan flipped a pancake. She's demanding to meet you, by the way. Fair warning. Thea poured herself coffee. I need to call my mom. Yeah? I've been avoiding it, but she's texted me 17 times since Christmas, and I need to tell her something. What are you going to say? Good question. Hi, Mom. I accidentally sent a love letter to my neighbor, and now we're dating, and also I might have a gallery commission? The truth, Thea decided, mostly. She took her coffee to the couch, stared at her phone, and finally called. Her mother picked up on the first ring. Thea, finally. I was beginning to think you'd frozen to death. Hi, Mom. Sorry. It's been a weird week. Weird good or weird bad? Thea looked at Declan, who was deliberately not listening while obviously listening. Weird good. Really good, actually. Oh? Her mother's voice sharpened with interest. Do tell. I sent my portfolio to Morrison Gallery. They want to meet with me about a commission. Her mother screamed. Actual screaming. Thea, that's incredible. Why didn't you call immediately? Because I was processing, and because something else happened. What else could possibly... Oh, her mother's tone changed. Oh, is it a boy? Mom, it's a boy. You have that voice. The one you get when you're trying to hide something. Papers rustled on her mother's end. Tell me everything. Who is he? How did you meet? Is he good to you? Thea took a breath. His name is Declan. He's my neighbor. And we've known each other for 3 years, but only actually got together this week. This week? As in the week that just happened? Yeah. Thea Marie Winters, you've been secretly in love with your neighbor for 3 years? Not secretly. I just never did anything about it. Thea curled into the couch. Until I accidentally sent him a letter confessing everything and then had to deal with the aftermath. Her mother was quiet for a beat. Then, is he there? Right now? Thea glanced at Declan. Yes? Put him on. Mom. Thea, put him on the phone. Thea walked to the kitchen, held out the phone. My mom wants to talk to you. Declan's eyes widened. Now? Apparently. He took the phone cautiously. Hello, Mrs. Winters. Thea couldn't hear her mother's response, but Declan's expression shifted. Surprise, then something softer. Yes, ma'am, he said. I know. I will. He glanced at Thea. She's pretty incredible, yeah. A long pause while her mother apparently delivered some kind of speech. Declan listened, nodding occasionally. I understand. No, I wouldn't dream of it. Yes, you too. He handed the phone back. Your mom is terrifying. What did she say? That if I hurt you, she'll drive to London and handle it personally. Declan smiled. Also that you've been drawing the same mystery neighbor for 3 years, and she's glad you finally did something about it. I didn't tell her that. She's your mother. She figured it out. Thea returned to the phone. You done interrogating my boyfriend? Boyfriend! Her mother sounded delighted. So it's official? Was it? They hadn't actually used labels. Thea looked at Declan, who was watching her with that steady gray gaze. Yeah, Thea said. It's official. Good. He sounds lovely. And British? Canadian, actually, just lives here. Even better. Canadians are polite. Her mother's voice softened. Thea, honey, I'm so proud of you. The gallery, the boy, all of it. You're finally letting yourself have things. Thea's throat tightened. Thanks, Mom. Now when can I meet him? New Year's? I could fly over. Not yet, Thea said quickly. Let me figure out how to be in a relationship first, before we add family to it. Fair enough, but soon. Soon, Thea agreed. After she hung up, Declan brought her pancakes. That went well? She threatened you with bodily harm, so, yeah, pretty standard. My sisters will do the same to you, for the record. He sat beside her. They're very protective. So we're meeting each other's families? Eventually. Declan stole a bite of her pancake. If that's okay. Thea thought about it. Meeting families felt huge, official. Like admitting this was real and lasting, instead of a holiday bubble that might pop in January. But maybe that was the point. Maybe admitting it was real was exactly what they needed to do. Okay, Thea said. Eventually. Declan smiled. Eventually works. They ate breakfast in comfortable silence, and Thea let herself imagine a future where this was normal, where she could call her mom and talk about her boyfriend, where meeting families was just the next step instead of an insurmountable hurdle. It felt possible. Terrifying, but possible. And maybe that was enough. The fire had burned down to embers when Declan asked the question Thea had been dreading. What happens when your heat gets fixed? They'd been reading, Thea sketching while he reviewed blueprints, and the question dropped into the quiet like a stone into still water. Thea's pencil stilled. What do you mean? I mean, you've been staying here because your apartment was freezing, but Mrs. Pemberton texted yesterday that the repair service finally came. So, Declan set his work aside. What happens now? Thea couldn't look at him. I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. She closed her sketchbook. I haven't thought about it. Liar. He was right. She'd thought about it, obsessed about it, laid awake at 3 a.m. running through scenarios. Did she go back to 4A and pretend the last 5 days hadn't completely rewired her? Did she ask to keep staying here and risk moving too fast? Did they alternate nights and try to maintain some independence? Thea, Declan said gently, talk to me. I don't want to go back, she admitted, to my apartment, to being alone. But I also don't want to assume I'm welcome here permanently. You're welcome here permanently. The words hung between them. Permanent. What did that even mean? A week? A month? Forever? We've known each other as more than neighbors for 5 days, Thea said. That's not long enough to make permanent decisions. Says who? Says everyone. Says normal relationship timelines. Says the logical part of my brain that knows we should slow down. Declan moved closer. And what does the illogical part of your brain say? That I want to stay, Thea's voice cracked. That I want to wake up here every morning and drink coffee with you and fall asleep listening to you breathe. But wanting something doesn't make it smart. Who says it has to be smart? Declan took her hands. Maybe it just has to feel right. What if it feels right now and wrong later? Then we deal with it later. He squeezed her fingers. Thea, I'm not asking you to move in forever. I'm asking if you want to stay. Tonight, tomorrow, the day after. And we can keep asking that question every day until either we stop wanting to ask or we realize we don't need to ask anymore. Thea looked at their joined hands. You make it sound simple. Because it is simple. Everything else, the logistics, the what-ifs, the timeline, that's just noise. Declan lifted her chin so she had to meet his eyes. Do you want to stay? Yes. Then stay. Just like that? Just like that, he smiled. We can move some of your things over tomorrow, make space in the closet, get you a drawer in the bathroom, whatever you need to feel like this is your space too. Thea's chest felt too tight. What if I mess this up? Then we'll figure it out. Declan pulled her into his lap, and she went willingly. Stop trying to predict every possible failure. Just be here, with me, now. Thea let herself relax into him. Okay. Yeah? Yeah. She kissed him, soft and sure. I'll stay. The fire crackled. Outside, London slept. Inside, they just made a decision that felt both monumental and inevitable. Thea would stay. Not because her apartment was cold, but because this, Declan's arms, his steady presence, the safety of being seen, felt like home in a way nowhere else ever had. Hey, Declan said after a while, can I show you something? Always. He retrieved his laptop, pulled up a folder, photos. Dozens of them. All architectural shots, Victorian buildings, restored interiors, historical sites, and in the backgrounds, barely visible but definitely there, Thea. Thea at the coffee shop. Thea on her fire escape. Thea walking past a building Declan had been photographing. Always distant, never the focus, but present. You photographed me, Thea whispered. Not on purpose, Declan said quickly. I was photographing buildings and you just kept appearing, and I didn't delete them because, he paused, because seeing you there made the photos feel complete. Thea scrolled through the images, 6 months worth, a year, evidence that Declan had been watching her the same way she'd been watching him. We're both stalkers, she said finally. Declan laughed. Apparently. This is either really romantic or really creepy. Can it be both? Thea looked at him. This man who'd collected accidental photographs, who'd written a letter he'd never sent, who'd read hers 17 times. This man who was giving her space to be messy while also refusing to let her run. Yeah, she said, it can be both. She kissed him, and this time it felt like a promise. Like choosing to stay wasn't just about tonight or tomorrow, but about something longer, something that might actually last. Outside, snow started to fall again. Inside, they were building a life together, one day at a time. We don't have to go, Declan said for the third time. Thea adjusted her dress, dark green, slightly too fancy for a neighborhood party, but the only nice thing she owned. We're going. You already RSVP'd. I can un-RSVP. Declan, she turned to face him, we can't hide in your apartment forever. Eventually, people are going to figure out we're together. People already know. Mrs. Pemberton told literally everyone. Then this won't be news. Thea grabbed her coat. Come on, it's just a party. A few hours. We can handle it. The party was in Marcus and Sarah's apartment, 2 floors down, significantly larger than either Thea's or Declan's place. Already crowded with building residents and their friends. Music played. Wine flowed. Everyone seemed determined to celebrate the new year with maximum enthusiasm. Thea felt immediately overwhelmed. Drink? Declan offered, hand on her lower back. Yes, strong one. He navigated to the kitchen while Thea tried to look comfortable. Several people she vaguely recognized smiled at her. Mrs. Pemberton waved from across the room, already slightly tipsy. Mr. Chen was telling a story that had 3 people laughing. Thea! Sarah appeared, pulling her into a hug. I'm so glad you came. Declan's been hermiting for years. Good to see him being social. I'm not that social, Thea said. You're here. That's more social than you've been in 3 years. Sarah lowered her voice. Listen, I know the building's been gossiping. If it's too much, just say the word and I'll run interference. Thanks. Thea appreciated the offer, even if she wasn't sure she'd take it. Declan returned with wine. They found a corner and tried to look relaxed. People drifted over, asking about the holidays, mentioning the weather, carefully not asking about their relationship while obviously wanting to. This is excruciating, Thea whispered. Want to leave? No, we're staying. She squeezed his hand. I need to prove I can do this. Prove to who? Me. At 11, someone cranked up the music. At 11:30, Sarah started distributing noisemakers. At 11:50, everyone gathered in the living room, counting down to midnight. Thea found herself pressed against Declan's side, surrounded by people who'd lived in this building for years, who knew each other's rhythms and routines. She'd been here 3 years and barely spoken to most of them. 10, 9, 8. Declan's arm tightened around her waist. 7, 6, 5. Thea looked up at him. He was already looking down at her. 4, 3, 2. Happy New Year, Declan whispered. 1. Happy New Year. He kissed her, in front of everyone, in the middle of the crowded room with noisemakers and confetti and people cheering. Kissed her like he didn't care who was watching, like this was the most natural thing in the world. When they broke apart, someone whistled, someone else cheered. Mrs. Pemberton was definitely crying happy tears. Well, Sarah said, grinning, that's one way to make it official. Thea's face burned, but Declan just smiled, kept his arm around her, and that made it okay. Made all of it okay. They stayed another hour, accepting congratulations, deflecting questions about timelines, slowly relaxing into the reality of being public. At 1 a.m., they finally escaped back to 4B. So, Declan said, closing the door behind them, we're officially the building's favorite couple. That was mortifying. That was sweet. He pulled her close. And you handled it perfectly. I wanted to run, but you didn't. Declan kissed her forehead. That's what matters. Thea let herself lean into him, let herself acknowledge that maybe she was getting better at this, at being seen, at letting people witness her happiness instead of hiding it. "Hey," she said. "Happy New Year." "Happy New Year, Thea Winters." Declan's smile was soft. "Here's to whatever comes next." Whatever came next. Gallery meetings and family introductions and normal relationship milestones. All the terrifying, wonderful things Thea had spent 3 years avoiding. "Here's to whatever comes next," she echoed, and meant it. Thea woke to sunlight and the realization that they'd made it to January. The holidays were over, real life was resuming, and she was still here, in Declan's bed, wearing his shirt. He was already awake, reading something on his phone. He noticed her stirring and set it aside. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning," Thea stretched. "What time is it?" "9. I let you sleep in." Declan traced a lazy pattern on her shoulder. "Big day tomorrow." "The gallery meeting. Right. January 2nd. Less than 36 hours away." "Don't remind me," Thea groaned. "You're going to be amazing." "You don't know that." "I do, actually." Declan shifted so he could see her face properly. "Want to practice?" "Practice what?" "Your pitch. What you'll say when they ask about your work." Thea considered this. She'd been avoiding thinking about the meeting, which was stupid because preparation would help. But preparation meant acknowledging it was real, and acknowledging it was real made her nervous. "Okay," she said finally. "Let's practice." They spent the morning running through scenarios. Declan played Morrison Gallery's curator, asking questions Thea hadn't considered. What inspired her Victorian series? How did she approach historical accuracy versus artistic interpretation? What was her process? At first, Thea stumbled, but Declan was patient, asking follow-up questions, pushing her to go deeper. By noon, she was talking about her work with something close to confidence. "See," Declan said, "you know your stuff." "I know my work," Thea corrected. "That doesn't mean I can sell it." "You're not selling it. They already want it. You're just explaining it." He pulled her onto the couch. "Trust yourself. Trust your talent." Thea wanted to. God, she wanted to. But 3 years of rejection had taught her to keep expectations low. Her phone buzzed. "Margot, how are you not freaking out right now?" Thea smiled. "I'm freaking out on the inside." "Good, that means you care." A pause. "Also, I want full details on the boyfriend situation. Video call later?" "Deal." Declan was watching her. "Margot?" "Yeah, she wants details on you." "What kind of details?" "Embarrassing ones, probably." Thea poked his chest. "She's very protective." "So are my sisters." Declan caught her hand. "We should probably coordinate our family's meeting. Make sure they don't team up against us." "Bold of you to assume they're not already planning it." "Fair point." He kissed her knuckles. "You ready for this? All of it? The gallery, the public relationship, meeting families?" Thea thought about it, really thought about it. A week ago, the answer would have been an immediate no. But now, sitting in Declan's arms, she felt something close to ready. "No," she admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." "That's my girl." Declan's smile was proud. "Brave even when you're terrified." "Your girl?" Thea raised an eyebrow. "Is that okay?" She kissed him. "Yeah, it's okay." They spent the rest of the day in comfortable domesticity, Declan working on blueprints while Thea refined her portfolio presentation. Occasional breaks for coffee, for conversation, for kisses that turned into more. At sunset, they stood at the window watching London turn gold. "Nervous about tomorrow?" Declan asked. "Terrified." "Good nervous or bad nervous?" "Both." Thea leaned into him. "But mostly good." Declan held her as the sun disappeared. Tomorrow, real life would intrude. The gallery meeting, work responsibilities, all the normal things they'd been avoiding in their holiday bubble. But tonight, they had this, each other, the warmth of the apartment, the promise of whatever came next. Hey, Thea said. Thank you. For what? For pushing me, for being patient, for not letting me run away when I wanted to. Declan kissed the top of her head. Always. Outside, the city settled into evening. Inside, they were ready for whatever January brought. Together. 7 days, Thea thought, lying awake at 2 a.m. 7 days since the letter. 7 days since everything changed. Declan slept beside her, one arm draped across her waist. Steady, present, real. She'd spent 3 years imagining what it might be like to be with him. The fantasy had been soft focus, romanticized. Morning coffee on the fire escape, long conversations about art and architecture, comfortable silences. The reality was messier, better, scarier. The reality included panic attacks and difficult conversations, included her running away and him letting her, included making out in the hallway and public kisses at New Year's Eve parties, included all the small intimacies she'd never let herself imagine, his toothbrush next to hers, his shirt on her body, his heartbeat under her palm. I love him, Thea realized. Not the careful, distant love she'd written in the letter. Real love. The kind that required showing up even when it was hard. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like relief. She was in love with Declan Hayes. Had been for 3 years, but this was different. This was love with knowledge, with context, with the certainty that he'd read her worst thoughts and stayed anyway. You're thinking so loud I can hear it, Declan mumbled, not opening his eyes. Sorry. Don't be. He pulled her closer. What's on your mind? Thea hesitated. She could deflect, make a joke, keep this revelation to herself until she was sure. Or she could be brave. I love you, she said into the darkness. Declan went very still. Then, yeah? Yeah. Thea's heart raced. Not in the letter way, in the real way, the present tense way. He opened his eyes, and even in the dim light, she could see his expression shift. Thea, you don't have to say it back, she rushed on. I just wanted you to know, because I spent 3 years not saying it, and I don't want to do that anymore. Declan cupped her face gently. I love you too. You don't have to. I love you too, he repeated firmly. Have for a while. Just didn't want to scare you off by saying it too soon. How long is a while? Honestly, since you moved in. Since the day you dropped that box of art supplies and laughed at yourself instead of being embarrassed. Declan's thumb brushed her cheek. I looked at you and thought, I'm in trouble. Thea let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. We're both idiots. Complete idiots, he kissed her. Soft, sure. But we're figuring it out. They lay tangled together, and Thea let herself feel the weight of what they just said. I love you. 3 words that changed everything and nothing. They'd felt this for years. Now they just had words for it. The gallery meeting tomorrow, Thea said eventually. Will you come with me? If you want me to. I want you to. She pressed closer. I'm terrified of doing it alone. Then I'll be there. Declan's arms tightened. For as long as you'll let me. Forever, Thea thought, but didn't say. It was too soon for forever. They'd only been together a week. But maybe that was okay. Maybe they could build toward forever instead of promising it right away. Declan, she whispered. I'm glad I sent that letter. She felt him smile against her hair. Me too. Even though it was an accident. Best accident I ever made. Second best, Declan corrected. The best one was when you knocked on my door that first day. Thea smiled in the darkness. 3 years ago, she'd knocked on 4B to ask about the building's Wi-Fi password. Declan had answered, rumpled and slightly awkward, and she'd known immediately she was doomed. That wasn't an accident, she admitted. Mrs. Pemberton had already given me the password. I just wanted an excuse to talk to you. Declan pulled back to look at her. Really? Really? So you've been plotting this whole time? Not plotting, just observing. Thea grinned. And drawing. Lots of drawing. I saw. Declan kissed her nose. 47 versions of the same staircase. It's a good staircase. It's a great staircase. He settled back down, pulling her with him. Go to sleep, Thea. Big day tomorrow. Thea closed her eyes, but sleep felt impossible. She was too wired, too full of feeling. I love you. She'd said it. He'd said it back. They'd survived the holidays and New Year's and were still here, still together, still figuring it out. Hey, Declan, she said one more time. Yeah? Thank you for reading my letter. He was quiet for a beat. Then, thank you for writing it. Outside, London slept. Inside, they just promised each other something more than tomorrow. Something that felt like the beginning of a real future. And for the first time in 3 years, Thea let herself believe in it. Thea changed her outfit 5 times. Black blazer? Too formal. Teal jacket? Too casual. The green dress from New Year's? Trying too hard. You look great in all of them, Declan said from the doorway. That's not helpful. Thea glared at the clothes explosion across his bed. This is Morrison Gallery. I need to look professional, but creative. Confident, but approachable. You need to look like yourself. Declan handed her the teal jacket and black jeans. It's you. Thea stared at the combination. He was right. It was her. The jacket she'd worn the day they'd gone to the bookshop, the jeans she lived in while drawing. Comfortable. Real. Okay, she breathed. Okay. She dressed quickly, hands still shaking. Declan made coffee while she attempted makeup, gave up and settled for just mascara. Her portfolio was already packed. Physical copies, digital backup on a tablet, examples of her process work. Ready? Declan asked, holding out her coat. No, but let's go anyway. The tube ride was torture. Thea ran through her talking points mentally, stumbling over words she'd practiced 100 times. Declan held her hand the entire way, silent support. Morrison Gallery was in Mayfair, all glass and white walls and intimidating modern architecture. Thea stopped on the sidewalk, staring up at it. I can't do this, she whispered. Yes, you can, Declan squeezed her hand. You're Thea Winters. You've been preparing for this your whole life. What if they hate everything? They won't. They asked you here. He turned her to face him. But even if they do, you're still talented. This isn't your only shot. Thea took a shaky breath. Okay. Okay? Okay. She straightened her jacket. Let's do this before I change my mind. The gallery interior was exactly as intimidating as Thea had imagined. High ceilings, carefully curated displays, a receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Thea Winters, Thea managed. I have a 10 a.m. with Eloise Chen. The receptionist smiled, genuine, not condescending. Miss Chen is expecting you. 3rd floor, first door on the left. Can I get you coffee? Yes, please, strong. They took the elevator in silence. Thea's portfolio felt too heavy. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Declan stayed close, a solid presence. The door to Miss Chen's office was open. A woman in her 50s, silver hair and a sharp bob, looked up and smiled. Thea, come in. She noticed Declan. And you brought? Declan Hayes, he said, shaking her hand. Moral support. Architect? Miss Chen's eyes sharpened with recognition. I thought I recognized the name. You did the Kensington restoration. Yes, ma'am. Beautiful work. Miss Chen turned to Thea. Well, you have excellent taste in support systems. Sit, both of you. The meeting blurred. Miss Chen asked questions about process, about inspiration, about technical execution. Thea answered, gaining confidence as she talked about her work. Declan sat quietly, but his presence anchored her. Halfway through, Miss Chen stopped her. I'm going to be direct. We want to commission 3 pieces for our spring Victorian exhibition. Large format, 30 by 40 inches. Your choice of subjects within the Victorian interior theme. Deadline is March 15th. Thea's brain stuttered. You, what? We're prepared to offer £15,000, 5,000 per piece. Ms. Chen slid a contract across the desk. Take this to a lawyer, review it, but I'll need an answer by next week. £15,000, 3 pieces, Morrison Gallery. Thea looked at Declan. He was grinning. Yes, Thea said. I mean, I'll review the contract, but yes, absolutely yes. Ms. Chen's smile was warm. Excellent. Welcome to Morrison Gallery, Ms. Winters. They made it to the street before Thea started crying. Hey, Declan said, alarmed. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. She laughed through tears. I got the commission. You got the commission, Declan repeated, pulling her into a hug. You did it. £15,000, Thea said into his shoulder. That's more than I've made all year. You deserve it, Declan held her tight. Every penny. They found a cafe around the corner. Thea ordered the most expensive pastry on the menu because she was going to be a commissioned artist at Morrison Gallery, because her hands wouldn't stop shaking with joy. I need to call Margot, she said, and my mom, and oh God, I need to figure out what 3 pieces to do. One thing at a time, Declan pushed coffee toward her. First, celebrate. The logistics can wait. Thea sipped her coffee, trying to absorb reality. This morning she'd been terrified. Now she had a contract in her bag and a deadline that felt achievable instead of impossible. Thank you, she said, for coming with me. I wouldn't have done it without you. You would have. Declan's eyes were soft, but I'm glad I got to be there. Her phone exploded with texts. Margot, who Thea had texted immediately after leaving the gallery. Congratulations in all caps. Demands for celebration plans. Threats to fly to London immediately. She's excited, Thea said, showing Declan the screen. She should be. You're incredible. Thea looked at him, this man who'd believed in her before she'd believed in herself, who'd read her letter and stayed, who'd held her hand through every panic and celebration. I love you, she said. Declan smiled. I love you too. They sat in the cafe until noon, making lists of potential pieces, discussing composition and color palettes. Declan offered architectural advice, where to find good Victorian details to reference, buildings she could photograph for inspiration. At some point, Thea realized this was the future. Not just the commission, but this. Declan and her, working together, supporting each other's dreams, building something that lasted beyond the holiday bubble. What are you thinking? Declan asked. That I'm really glad I sent that letter, Thea said, even though it was an accident. Best accident ever, Declan agreed. They walked back through London, hand in hand, and everything looked different, brighter, full of possibility. When they reached their building, Mrs. Pemberton was waiting in the lobby. Well, she demanded, how did it go? I got the commission, Thea said. Mrs. Pemberton screamed. Actually screamed, then pulled Thea into a hug that nearly knocked her over. I knew it. I told everyone you were talented. Didn't I tell everyone? You did, Declan confirmed, grinning. This calls for celebration. Come down for dinner. I'm making roast, no arguments. Mrs. Pemberton was already heading toward her apartment. 7 p.m. sharp. Thea looked at Declan. Did we just get ordered to dinner? We absolutely did. He pulled her toward the stairs. But first, we're celebrating privately. They barely made it through his door before they were kissing, hungry and celebratory and full of relief. Thea's portfolio dropped to the floor. Declan's coat followed. Gallery artist, he murmured against her mouth. Your girlfriend, Thea corrected. My incredibly talented girlfriend. Declan lifted her, and she wrapped her legs around his waist. Who I'm very proud of. They made it to the bedroom. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of celebration and laughter, and the kind of intimacy that came from genuine happiness. Later, wrapped in sheets and contentment, Thea traced patterns on Declan's chest. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That this is real," Thea said. "The gallery, us, all of it. It's real." Declan kissed her forehead. "And it's just the beginning." The video call with Declan's sisters was scheduled for 8 p.m. Thea spent the previous hour catastrophizing. "What if they hate me?" she asked for the seventh time. "They won't hate you." Declan set up his laptop on the coffee table. "They're nosy and overprotective, but they don't hate anyone." "That's not reassuring. Clara's a lawyer. She'll interrogate you. Maya's a teacher. She'll try to make you comfortable. They balance each other out." Declan pulled Thea onto the couch beside him. "Just be yourself." The call connected. Two faces appeared, one sharp-featured and skeptical, one softer and smiling. "There he is." The softer one, Maya, beamed. "And this must be Thea. Hi, we've heard so much about you." "All good things," Clara added, though her expression suggested she was reserving judgment. "Mostly." Thea's stomach clenched. "Hi, it's nice to meet you both." "So," Clara leaned forward, "you're the neighbor who accidentally sent a love letter?" "Clara," Declan warned. "What? It's a fair question. I want to know how this happened." Clara's eyes were sharp, but not unkind. "Declan doesn't do spontaneous. This is very spontaneous." "It wasn't spontaneous," Thea said. "I'd liked him for 3 years. The letter was just delayed honesty." Maya laughed. "I like her. She's direct." 3 years, Clara repeated. "And you never said anything?" "I was scared," Thea admitted. "Of rejection, of ruining what we had." "What did you have?" Clara asked. "He says you barely talked." "We had potential." Thea glanced at Declan. "And that felt too precious to risk." Something in Clara's expression softened. "Okay, I can respect that." The interrogation continued, gentle from Maya, pointed from Clara. What did Thea do? How serious was this? What were her intentions? Declan tried to intervene multiple times, but his sisters steamrolled him. Finally, Maya took pity. "Clara, stop terrorizing Declan's girlfriend. Thea, tell us about the gallery commission." Declan mentioned it, but was annoyingly vague. Thea relaxed slightly. Art she could talk about. She explained the commission, the pieces she was planning, the deadline. Maya asked thoughtful questions. Even Clara seemed interested. "That's impressive," Clara said eventually. "Takes guts to put your work out there." "Says the woman who argues in front of judges," Declan muttered. "That's different. That's my job." Clara's expression turned serious. "Thea, I'm going to be direct. Our brother has terrible taste in people. His last girlfriend was a nightmare, so we're protective." "Clara," Declan started. "But," Clara continued, "you seem genuine, and you make him happy. We can tell because he's smiling, which he never does on family calls." Thea looked at Declan. He was smiling, that soft, real smile she'd only started seeing this week. "I'm trying," Thea said, "to make him happy, to be worth the risk he took." "You are worth it," Maya said firmly. "Anyone who writes a 3-page love letter and then panics about it is definitely worth it." After the call ended, Thea collapsed against the couch. "That was terrifying." "You did great," Declan pulled her close. "Clara liked you. She's just bad at showing it." "Your family is intense." "Says the woman whose mother threatened me with bodily harm." Declan grinned. "We come from protective people." Thea thought about that. Protective people. People who cared enough to interrogate, to question, to make sure the people they loved were safe. "When do I meet your parents?" she asked. Declan blinked. "Are you sure you want to? After that?" "Yeah," Thea sat up. "If we're doing this, really doing this, I should meet them." "Okay." Declan looked pleased. "They're in Toronto, but they're visiting in March, after your commission deadline." "Perfect." Thea kissed him. "Gives me time to prepare." "You don't need to prepare. Just be you." "That's what worries me." But Thea was smiling, because this was real. Meeting families, making plans, building a future that extended past January. Outside, London settled into evening. Inside, they were creating something that might actually last. The first sketch came at 3 a.m. Thea woke with the image fully formed in her mind. A Victorian library, afternoon light streaming through tall windows, dust motes suspended like stars. She grabbed her sketchbook and started drawing before the vision could fade. Declan woke to find her at his desk, hunched over paper, completely absorbed. "Thea?" he said softly. She jumped. "Sorry, did I wake you?" "No." He moved closer, looking at her sketch. "Is this for the commission?" "Maybe. I don't know. The idea just hit me." Thea set her pencil down. "I couldn't not draw it." Declan studied the sketch. "It's beautiful. Melancholic. Like the light is mourning something." That was exactly right. Thea looked at him. "How did you know that?" "Because I know you." He kissed the top of her head. "And you draw what you feel." The observation settled something in Thea's chest. He was right. Every piece she'd ever made was a feeling translated to paper. Joy, longing, fear, hope. These three pieces for Morrison Gallery needed to be feelings too. Not just technically perfect, but emotionally true. "I need to figure out what I'm trying to say," Thea said. "So say it." Declan pulled up a chair beside her. "What do you want these pieces to communicate?" Thea thought about it. Victorian interiors. The theme was set. But within that, what mattered to her? "Home," she said slowly. "Not houses. Home. The feeling of belonging somewhere." "Then that's what you paint." Declan squeezed her shoulder. "Show people what home feels like to you." Over the next week, the pieces took shape in Thea's mind. The library, intellectual home, the sanctuary of knowledge. A kitchen, domestic home, warmth and nourishment. And a bedroom, intimate home, safety and vulnerability. She photographed Victorian buildings around London, collecting references. Declan came with her, offering architectural insights, pointing out details she'd missed. They spent hours in archives, looking at historical photographs, understanding how light moved through 19th century spaces. At night, Thea sketched. Declan worked beside her, the comfortable silence of two people pursuing their crafts in parallel. "Do you ever think about how weird this is?" Thea asked one evening. "What?" "This, us. 2 weeks ago, I couldn't even talk to you properly. Now we're working side by side like we've done this forever." Declan set down his pencil. "Does it feel weird?" "No, that's the weird part." Thea gestured at their setup, her sketchbooks and reference photos, his blueprints and measuring tools. "It feels normal, like we were always supposed to be doing this." "Maybe we were." Declan pulled her into his lap. "Maybe that's why it was so frustrating being just neighbors. We both knew there was supposed to be more." Thea kissed him. "When did you get so philosophical?" "When I started dating an artist." "You're rubbing off on me," he grinned, in the best way. The work continued. Thea's sketches evolved into detailed studies. She experimented with color palettes, cool blues and warm ambers for the library, rich golds and deep reds for the kitchen, soft grays and gentle whites for the bedroom. January passed in a blur of creation. The commission consumed her in the best way, total immersion, the kind of focus that made everything else fall away. But Declan was always there when she surfaced, with coffee, with food, with the steady presence that kept her grounded. "You're my anchor," Thea said one night, exhausted but happy. "You're my inspiration," Declan replied. They fell asleep tangled together, and Thea dreamed in Victorian architecture. The panic hit in mid-February. Thea woke up at 4 a.m. in a cold sweat, staring at the ceiling, suddenly convinced everything was wrong. The pieces were terrible. The composition was off. The color choices were cliché. Morrison Gallery would take one look and cancel the commission. Worse, she'd somehow fooled Declan into thinking she was talented, into thinking she was worth staying for. Any day now, he'd realize his mistake. Thea slipped out of bed carefully, grabbed her sketchbook, and retreated to the living room. She flipped through her work with increasingly frantic criticism. Too derivative, not original enough. What had she been thinking? Thea? She looked up. Declan stood in the doorway, bleary and concerned. Sorry, she whispered. Didn't mean to wake you. You didn't. He sat beside her, noticing her expression. What's wrong? Everything. Nothing. I don't know. Thea closed the sketchbook. What if I can't do this? What if I'm not good enough? You are good enough. You don't know that. You're biased because you love me. I love you and you're good enough. Declan took the sketchbook, opened it to a recent study. Look at this. Really look. The way you've captured the light, the emotional depth. This isn't just technical skill, Thea. This is art. What if the gallery disagrees? Then the gallery is wrong. Declan's voice was firm. But they won't. They commissioned you for a reason. Thea wanted to believe him, but the doubt was so loud, drowning out reason. I'm sorry, she said. I know this is exhausting, dating someone who spirals every few weeks. You're not exhausting. Declan pulled her close. You're scared. There's a difference. How are you so patient? Because I've been there. Declan's arms tightened. When I was working on my first major restoration, I was convinced I'd destroy a historical building. Spent 3 months second-guessing every decision. My mentor had to physically stop me from ripping out work I'd already completed. Thea pulled back to look at him. Really? Really? Imposter syndrome doesn't care about actual skill. It just screams that you're not enough. Declan brushed hair from her face. But you are enough. More than enough. What did you do to get through it? I finished the project, turned it in, let other people judge whether I'd succeeded. Declan smiled ruefully. Turns out I'd done good work. I just couldn't see it through the fear. Thea absorbed this. So I should just finish? You should trust yourself. Trust your process. Trust that the gallery saw something real in your portfolio. Declan kissed her forehead. And when the doubt gets too loud, talk to me. Let me remind you. They sat in the pre-dawn silence. Slowly, Thea's panic subsided. Not gone. She'd learned it never fully went away, but manageable. Thank you, she said eventually. Always. Declan stood, held out his hand. Come back to bed. You need sleep. Thea let him pull her up. Declan? Yeah? I'm really grateful you read my letter, even though I was mortified. Best thing that ever happened to me, Declan said. Second best is you knocking on my door looking for Wi-Fi passwords you already had. Thea laughed, and the sound broke the last of the tension. I thought I was so clever. You were transparent. Declan led her back to the bedroom, but adorable. They climbed back into bed, and Thea curled into his warmth. The doubt was still there, whispering in the background, but quieter now, easier to ignore. Declan, she murmured, already half asleep. I love you. I love you too. His arms tightened. Now sleep. Your brilliant art mind needs rest. Thea smiled into his shoulder and let herself drift. The final piece came together in early March. Thea stood back from her makeshift workspace, Declan's living room, which had become half art studio, and stared at the 3 completed paintings. The library, all knowledge and longing. The kitchen, all warmth and belonging. The bedroom, all safety and vulnerability. 3 pieces, 30 by 40 inches each. Victorian interiors that felt like emotions made physical. They're done, Thea whispered. Declan emerged from the bedroom, coffee in hand. He stopped when he saw her expression. Yeah? Yeah. Thea couldn't look away from the paintings. They're actually done. Declan set down his coffee and moved to stand beside her. They studied the pieces together in silence. They're beautiful, Declan said finally. Thea, these are... Do you think they're good enough? The question escaped before she could stop it. I think they're extraordinary. Declan turned her to face him. I think Morrison Gallery is lucky to have you. I think anyone who sees these will feel something. Thea looked at the paintings again. He was right. They weren't perfect. She could see every flaw, every brushstroke that wasn't quite what she'd envisioned. But they were honest, real. They showed what home meant to her. I need to photograph them, Thea said. Send the images to Miss Chen. Arrange for transport. All of which you can do tomorrow. Declan pulled her away from the paintings. Tonight, we celebrate finishing. We haven't submitted them yet, but you completed 3 major pieces in 6 weeks. That's worth celebrating. They ordered Thai food and ate on the couch, carefully avoiding Thea's workspace. Declan proposed a toast with cheap wine from the corner shop. To Thea Winters, he said, raising his glass, gallery artist and the most talented person I know. To finishing, Thea corrected, and to not completely losing my mind in the process. They clinked glasses. The wine was terrible. The moment was perfect. Can I ask you something? Thea said. Always. When you were working on that first restoration, the one where you almost destroyed everything, what made you finally trust yourself? Declan thought about it. Time, mostly, and distance. Once I stepped back and looked at what I'd actually built versus what I'd imagined building, I could see they weren't that different. He squeezed her hand. You'll have that moment too. When you see your paintings in the gallery, surrounded by other art, and realize they belong there. What if I don't? Then I'll be there to remind you. Declan's smile was soft. That's what we do now. Remind each other when the doubt gets too loud. Thea leaned into him. How did I get so lucky? You wrote a letter, Declan kissed her temple, and I was smart enough to read it 17 times. They fell asleep on the couch, too exhausted to make it to the bedroom. When Thea woke at dawn, Declan had draped a blanket over her and was sketching something at his desk. What are you drawing? She mumbled. You. He held up the sketchbook. Sleeping. You looked peaceful. Thea studied the drawing. Simple lines, but he'd captured something. The exhaustion and contentment mixed together. I didn't know you could draw, she said. I'm an architect. Drawing is required. Declan set the sketchbook aside. But I'm not as good as you. Good enough. Thea stood, stretched. Coffee? Already made. They spent the morning photographing Thea's pieces, getting every angle right. She sent the images to Miss Chen with a brief email, trying not to overthink every word. The response came in minutes. Stunning work. The movers will pick them up Friday. See you at the opening, March 28th. March 28th. 3 weeks away. The opening where Thea's work would be displayed publicly for the first time. I'm going to throw up, Thea said. You're going to be amazing, Declan corrected, and I'll be right there with you. Thea changed her outfit 4 times before settling on the green dress, the same one she'd worn on New Year's Eve, the one Declan said made her eyes look like forest light. Ready? He asked, offering his arm. Absolutely not, but she took his arm anyway. Let's go before I chicken out. The gallery opening was exactly as intimidating as Thea had imagined. Champagne, well-dressed people, her paintings hanging on pristine white walls with little brass plaques bearing her name. Thea Winters, contemporary artist. That's you, Declan whispered. That's me, Thea repeated, trying to believe it. Miss Chen found them immediately. Thea, wonderful, you're here. Come, I want to introduce you to some people. The next hour blurred. Collectors, critics, other artists. Everyone wanted to talk about her Victorian series, about her process, about what inspired her. Thea answered on autopilot, falling back on the talking points she'd practiced with Declan. At some point, he disappeared. Thea panicked briefly before spotting him across the room, deep in conversation with another architect about building preservation. She studied her paintings from a distance. They looked different here, professional, like real art instead of personal therapy disguised as Victorian interiors. They're remarkable, a voice said beside her. Thea turned. A woman in her 60s, elegantly dressed, smiled at her. Thank you. I particularly love the bedroom piece, the way you've captured vulnerability without sentimentality. The woman extended her hand. Vera Morrison, I own this gallery. Thea nearly dropped her champagne. Ms. Morrison, it's an honor. The honor is mine. Eloise speaks highly of you. Vera studied the paintings. Tell me, what made you choose home as your theme? Thea looked at the pieces, at Declan across the room, at this moment she'd spent years working toward. I spent a long time not letting myself have one, Thea said honestly. A home, I mean. I kept people at a distance because distance felt safer. But then I met someone who made me want to risk it. She gestured at the paintings. These are what home feels like when you finally let yourself have it. Vera smiled. Honest work, that's rare. She handed Thea a business card. Call me next month. I'd like to discuss representation, long term. She walked away, leaving Thea staring at the card. Representation, long term. Morrison Gallery wanted to represent her. Declan materialized at her elbow. What just happened? I think, Thea looked at him, then the card, then back at him. I think Morrison Gallery wants to represent me. Of course they do. Declan pulled her into a hug. You're brilliant. I sent you a love letter by accident, Thea said into his shoulder, and now I'm a represented artist. How is this my life? Best accident ever, Declan repeated. They stayed until the gallery closed, watching people admire Thea's work, listening to conversations about composition and emotional depth. At one point, someone asked to purchase the library piece. Miss Chen handled the negotiation while Thea tried not to hyperventilate. Walking home through London at midnight, still dressed for the opening, Thea couldn't stop smiling. What are you thinking? Declan asked. That 3 months ago, I was alone in a freezing apartment, terrified of my own feelings. Thea squeezed his hand. And now I'm here, with you, with a career that's actually happening. It was always happening, Declan said. You just needed to let yourself see it. I needed you to help me see it. We helped each other. Declan stopped, turned to face her under a street lamp. Thea, there's something I want to ask you. Her heart stuttered. Okay. Move in with me, officially. Not because your heat broke or because it's convenient. Because I want to wake up next to you every day. Because I want this, us, to be permanent. Thea stared at him. 2 months. They'd been together 2 months. That was too fast, too soon, too risky. Okay, she said. Yeah? Yeah. Thea kissed him. I'm tired of living between 2 apartments. I want to just live with you. Declan's smile was brilliant. Best decision you'll ever make. Second best, Thea corrected. First best was sending that letter. This is happening, Thea thought, packing boxes in her apartment. I'm actually moving in with Declan. It had been a week since the gallery opening. A week since she'd agreed to make 4B their official home instead of just a place she'd been crashing. A week of logistics, lease termination, furniture decisions, combining lives. Keep or donate, Margot's voice came through the phone propped against the wall. What? Thea looked at the item in her hands. A lamp she'd bought freshman year of college. Ugly, but sentimental. The lamp, keep or donate. Keep, it's... Thea couldn't explain why. It's from before, when everything was different. Then keep it, Margot's voice softened. Babe, you're allowed to bring your history into your future. Thea set the lamp in the keep box. Her apartment looked strange, half empty. She'd lived here 3 years. 3 years of careful solitude, of keeping people at arm's length, of loving Declan through walls. Are you scared? Margot asked. Terrified. Thea sat on the floor. What if we drive each other crazy? What if living together ruins what we have? What if it makes what you have better? Margot countered. Thea, you've been basically living together for 2 months. This just makes it official. That's what scares me. Official. Because official means you can't run? Thea was quiet. Margot knew her too well. Yeah, she admitted finally, because I can't run. Good, Margot said firmly. You've been running your whole life. Time to stay. After they hung up, Thea continued packing. Personal items, books, her extensive collection of art supplies, the sketchbooks full of Declan, 3 years of documentation she'd never shown him. A knock at the door. Declan, holding coffee and takeout containers. Lunch break, he announced. You've been packing for 4 hours. They sat on Thea's bare floor, eating pad thai and cataloging what still needed to be moved. You can keep your apartment, Declan said suddenly. If you want a studio space, Mrs. Pemberton would probably give you a good rate. Thea considered this. No, I think I need to fully commit. No backup plan. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Thea leaned against him. Besides, your apartment has better light. And the apartment with you in it is better. Declan kissed the top of her head. The apartment with you in it is definitely better. They finished packing that afternoon. Declan helped carry boxes down the hall. The 10 feet that had felt like miles for 3 years, now feeling like nothing. Everything Thea owned fit into Declan's space with room to spare. Her art supplies claimed one corner. Her books integrated with his. Her clothes filled half the closet he'd cleared for her. It looks like you live here, Declan said, surveying the result. I do live here. Thea turned in a circle, taking it in. This is home. That night, officially moved in, Thea found herself unable to sleep. Not panic, just awareness. This was real. She built something with Declan, something lasting. What are you thinking? Declan murmured, not asleep either. That I'm happy, Thea said, genuinely, terrifyingly happy. Why is happy terrifying? Because I'm not used to it, because I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Declan pulled her closer. What if nothing goes wrong? What if this just works? Thea thought about that. What if this just worked? What if she could have happiness without waiting for disaster? Then I guess I get to keep you, she said. You definitely get to keep me. Declan's voice was warm. I'm not going anywhere. Thea believed him. For the first time in her life, she let herself believe in permanence. 6 months later, Thea stood on the fire escape of their apartment. Not his anymore, theirs, drinking morning coffee and watching London wake up. The Morrison Gallery representation had led to 3 more commissions. Vera Morrison was talking about a solo exhibition in the fall. Thea had quit her freelance work to focus on art full-time, something she'd never imagined possible. But more than the career success, more than the validation, was this, the life she'd built with Declan. Coffee thief, Declan said, stepping onto the fire escape with his own mug. You took the good beans. You snooze, you lose, Thea smiled. Besides, I made enough for both of us. They stood side by side, watching the street below. A routine they developed over 6 months of cohabitation. Morning coffee, comfortable silence, the settled feeling of being home. My parents are coming next week, Declan reminded her. I know, I'm prepared. Thea had met them over video call 3 times, survived Clara and Maya's continued interrogation, and generally been accepted into the Hayes family with warmth she hadn't expected. And your mom is visiting in August. She's already planning the itinerary. Thea's mother had visited in April, spent 3 days crying happy tears over Thea's gallery success and Declan's existence, and left declaring him absolutely perfect. We're really doing this, Declan said. The whole domestic thing. We are, Thea leaned into him. Is it what you expected? Better. Declan set down his coffee to wrap both arms around her. When I wrote that letter last Christmas, I never imagined this. Thought maybe we'd date. Maybe it would work out. But this, having you here, building a life together, This is better than anything I imagined. Thea thought about her own letter. The burn letter she'd written in desperation, meaning to destroy. The accident that had changed everything. I'm glad I sent it, she said, even though it was mortifying, even though I tried to lie about it being fiction. I knew it wasn't fiction. Declan's arms tightened. Every word was too specific, too real. You could have called me out immediately. Where would the fun be in that? Declan grinned. Besides, I liked watching you panic. You're cute when you're panicking. I'm never cute when I'm panicking. Extremely cute. He kissed her temple. Also brave. Also mine. Thea turned in his arms. Yours? If you want to be. I want to be. She kissed him properly. For as long as you'll have me. Forever then. Declan said it casually, but his eyes were serious. If we're being specific. Forever. The word didn't scare her anymore. 6 months of waking up together, of working side by side, of weathering her panic attacks in his busy seasons. It had proven they could do this, could build something lasting. Forever works, Thea agreed. They finished their coffee as the sun rose fully over London. Somewhere in the building, Mrs. Pemberton was probably already awake, planning her next matchmaking scheme. Marcus and Sarah were making breakfast. Mr. Chen was doing Tai Chi in his apartment. Their building, their neighborhood, their life. Want to know a secret? Thea said. Always. I've been working on something, for you. She'd been sketching in secret for weeks, a portrait of Declan, not from imagination this time, but from shared memory. Every version of him she'd fallen in love with, compiled into one piece. When do I get to see it? When it's done, Thea smiled. It's almost there, just needs the final layer, Declan finished, the one that makes it real. He understood. Of course he understood. That was what they'd built, understanding, trust, the kind of love that didn't need explanation. Inside, Thea's phone buzzed, probably Margot demanding updates, or her mom wanting to finalize August plans, or Vera with details about the fall exhibition. But out here, on the fire escape where Thea had spent 3 years watching Declan from a distance, they had this moment. Coffee and sunrise, and the settled certainty of choosing each other. I love you, Thea said. I love you too, Declan kissed her. Now and forever. All because you sent the wrong letter to the right person. Thea laughed. Best mistake I ever made. Second best, Declan corrected. First best was knocking on my door 3 years ago pretending you needed the Wi-Fi password. I really did need the password. Liar. Fine, I wanted to talk to you. I know. Declan's smile was soft. I'm glad you did, even if it took 3 years and an accidental confession to get us here. They headed inside, leaving their empty mugs on the fire escape railing, a habit they developed, marking their territory on the narrow metal platform that had witnessed the beginning of them. Inside their apartment, light streamed through windows. Thea's paintings lined one wall. Declan's blueprints covered the desk. Evidence of 2 lives merged into one. Home, Thea thought. Not a place, a person. A choice made every day to stay instead of run. She'd sent a letter by accident. He'd read it 17 times. And somehow, impossibly, they'd built this. A love that started with words on paper and grew into something real. Something lasting. Something that felt exactly like coming home.